and we take note that a full complement of the board is present. The Chief Executive Officer, the Interim County Counsel, and the Sergeant at Arms are all here to assist. Before we begin our meeting today, I would like everyone who's able to stand as we take a moment of silence for the victims of the devastating Turkey and Syria earthquake. This morning, Los Angeles County joins the world in its mourning for the more than 5,200 people who died as a result of the earthquake that hit Turkey and Syria yesterday. In a region already beleaguered by conflict, this disaster adds a new layer of horrific suffering. And last night, it's worth noting that our own Los Angeles County Fire Department's highly specialized urban search and rescue team was dispatched to Turkey as part of the U.S. response to the earthquake. And their team includes 79 firefighters, paramedics, doctors, and 6 dogs who can help find people still trapped in the rubble, and 3 structural engineers who can lend their expertise to search teams entering dangerous, unsteady buildings. We're proud and grateful of the bravery of this team. We pray for their success. So as we take this moment of silence for the victims, inhabited and cared for by the Tongva, the Tataviam, Serrano, Quiche, and Chumash peoples. We honor and pay respect to their elders and descendants, past, present, and emerging, as they continue their stewardship of these lands and waters. We acknowledge that settler colonization resulted in land seizure, disease, subjugation, slavery, relocation, broken promises, genocide, and multi-generational trauma. This acknowledgement demonstrates our responsibility and commitment to truth, healing, and reconciliation, and to elevating the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of Los Angeles County. We are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on these ancestral lands. We are dedicated to growing and sustaining relationships with Native peoples and local tribal governments, including, in no particular order, the Fernandino Tataviam Band of Mission Indians, the Gabrielino Tongva Indians of California Tribal Council, the Gabrielino Tongva San Gabriel Band of Mission Indians, the Gabrielino Band of Mission Indians, Quiche Nation, the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, the San Fernando Band of Mission Indians. Okay, now we will be moving into the invocation and the pledge. The invocation this morning will be led by Pastor Kenny Cook, New Christ Memorial Church in the city of Pacoima from the 3rd. Thank you, Supervisor Horvath. And I wanted to thank Luis Dominguez for joining us here today and leading us in our Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Dominguez served in the United States Army Infantry from 1966 to 1969 as a Specialist 4. He was part of Company C, 6th Battalion, 31st Regiment, 9th Infantry Division in the Vietnam War. He is a highly decorated veteran, receiving the Purple Heart, a Bronze Star with a V, and an Army Commendation Medal with V. Am I saying that right? With V? For his selfless sacrifice for our country. He's an active member of the American Legion Post 61, based in my hometown of San Pedro. I've known Luis for many years and have always greatly admired his heroic service to our country and his dedication to serving our community. He was the Tyler, this is something you probably don't know about him, but next time you see this bridge, you're going to think about Luis Dominguez. He was the tireless champion of the effort to illuminate the Vincent Thomas Bridge that connects the San Pedro to Terminal Island with blue lights. So next time you're ever down there between Long Beach and San Pedro, driving over that bridge at night, you can remember that Luis Dominguez almost single-handedly championed that, raised the money for it, and it's still lit up to this day. Lewis serves as my appointee on the county's Commission for Older Adults and as a docent on the battleship USS Iowa Museum at the Port of Los Angeles. As a tribute to his exemplary military service and long-standing commitment to helping veterans, we will be naming the new Project Home Key site in San Pedro for formerly homeless veterans in honor of Luis Dominguez. And good to see you, Suzanne, out there in the audience. Thank you for bringing Louis this morning. Your family means a lot to all of us. And now for our All Creatures Great and Small segment of the Board of Supervisors. Last week we even had a bunny.
I know. Now we've got Cookie, and Cookie is a 2-month-old female domestic short hair available at the Downey Shelter. And if you want to adopt Cookie, it's 562-940-6898. And Cookie was kind of loud this morning, so I don't. How's she doing now? Okay. And there's a lot of kittens available at all of our shelters, so I would encourage you all to either go online or make an appointment to go down, and you can foster as well. But this is Cookie.
Also available at the Downey Shelter, 562-940-6898.
Yeah. Oh, that was Logan. This is Cookie. Thank you. You're trying to agitate the cat, aren't you? Yeah. And now this one's going to melt everybody's heart. This Cookie did too, but this is Sammy, a 2-month-old male Maltese, also available at the Downey Shelter, 562-940-6898. And honest, look at that face. I mean, this dog, once he gets acclimated, he's just got a personality like you wouldn't believe. Say hi. This is Sammy.
Item 61, 62, item 8, and item 15, which will all be taken up together, followed by items 9 and 13, then items 16 and 1D, which will be taken up together, and ending with item 22, which were held by supervisors, and finishing with the remaining items not held by the board and general public comment. Before we begin with our held items, Executive Officer, please read the call-in information that was provided on the agenda and explain the speaking rules.
For members of the public wishing to participate remotely, please note that AT&T participation line has changed to 844-867-6169 and use participant code number 6409970. You may also find the number on the board's website at bos.lacounty.gov. Members of the public participating remotely or in the boardroom, you will have the opportunity to address the board throughout the meeting. You will receive 1 minute to address the board on items held by the supervisors and up to a total of 3 minutes on all remaining items in general public comment, for a total of 6 minutes for this meeting. Please monitor your time and the items you are signing up for, as your name will not be called once your time has elapsed. For members of the public joining us remotely, when the board moves to the item you wish to address, promptly press 1, then 0 to be entered into the speaking queue. Remember to turn down the volume on your devices as soon as the moderator calls on you, or there will be an echo. You will need to press 1, then 0 for each item on which you would like to speak on. To ensure we hear from both in-person and telephonic speakers, we will alternate between the 2 speaking queues. Members of the public who are in attendance, when you hear or see your name displayed on the screen, please come down to the front of the boardroom and staff will assist you. Do not approach the podium until directed to do so. We will begin by calling in-person speakers, and while they're coming forward, we will take telephonic speakers.
Colleagues and members of the public, we have a number of items today on the agenda, all related to the important topic of gun regulations and safety. And before we hear, we will be taking them up together. And before we hear from my colleagues on these items, we're going to allow the members of the public to comment first on any and all of these items. You will have 1 minute to address items 2, 61, 62, 8, and 15. And for members of the public on the telephone wishing to address any of the gun regulation items, you don't need to press
as
one.
well as we can, but right now, we're still going to be allowing people to either call in or be here in person in our hearing room. So, Executive Officer, please call the members of the public who you are in queue on these items.
Madam Chair, before we start, let me repeat the number again, 844-867-6169, and use participant code number 640-9970. Will the following individuals please come forward and staff will assist you? Red Chief Hunt, Katrina Williams, Jane Gold, Ashley Castillo, Donna Brown, Stacy Mosley, Jennifer Lupo, and Herman Herman. Moderator, may we please have the first adult speaker?
Our first participant is Eric Prevan. You may begin.
Thank you. It's Eric Prevan. I'm very opposed to guns in California, and I think that a lot of these measures are in the right direction. I would just draw your attention to the fact that your meeting agenda phone number and all that stuff is completely scrambled. I know you tried to put it up and tell people, but this is one of the largest counties in America. I don't understand why that would happen. It sounds like you're trying to block people from calling in and being frustrated. I was on ignore for about 20 minutes. It's unbelievable. People wonder, should we be doing more regulations, or should we be doing something else? Because nothing has been working, as we can all tell. These shootings are out of control. And, to me, it makes sense to do everything we can to get them out of the way, these guns, and prevent this kind of horror from happening. But one idea would be to play hard, like the developers play. Let's buy up all the guns. Let's not joke around with little buybacks. Let's hire a bunch of kids out of college and get the billionaires who are so worried about everything to step up and buy up these guns.
Thank you. And we apologize for any inconvenience, and I agree, right? We got to get this right. So this technical difficulty is really unacceptable. Okay, next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Margot Bennett. You may begin.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Margot Bennett. I'm the Executive Director of Women Against Gun Violence. We were founded 30 years ago here in LA County, and since that time, the men and women of our board of directors and the many gun violence survivors we represent have worked tirelessly to prevent gun violence. I'm speaking to you today to express our gratitude and support for these gun violence prevention ordinances, and believe strongly that they will have a positive impact for not only our communities, but other jurisdictions as they become a model for action. We hope you will pass them unanimously, and we look forward to working closely with all of you on any additional measures you are considering that will prevent gun violence and help keep our communities safe. Thank you again.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Megan Odson. You may begin.
Good morning. My name is Megan Odson. I'm a board member at Women Against Gun Violence, as well as an LA County resident. I want to thank the Board of Supervisors for their bold leadership on the issue of local gun regulation. We are living through a real crisis of gun violence, and understanding how slow and difficult it's been to make meaningful change on a federal level means we have no choice but to take bold action here at home. More than 300 people will be shot in America today, 300 in one day. And as the events of the last few weeks show, our residents in the state of California and in this very county are not immune. We are in such a unique position to set a powerful example in gun safety for the state and the rest of the nation. So I urge you to please adopt all of the safety measures proposed today and implement them with urgency. They will save lives here and beyond. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Andrew Harms. You may begin.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak today. And I'm probably in the smaller minority of the people that actually oppose these gun regulations, because gun regulations don't do anything other than make areas less safe for law-abiding citizens. And as you know, there are many lawsuits across the U.S. right now that states are losing when they're trying to adopt ordinances similar to these. So for that reason, I oppose all of the regulations that oppose to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Roy Humphreys. You may begin.
Oh, okay, folks. History has shown that this proliferation of regulation after regulation does nothing but create a bunch of paperwork, so forth. And it's just the history, just the numbers, and most recently, and the idea of buying back guns is simply obscene. You have a population that has guns, and the persons who want to get guns will always get guns. It's been shown at historically speaking, and they're coming across our southern border. So forget about it, trash all these regulations. It's called prolific political pandering. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Andrew Jarvis. You may begin.
Hello, this is Andrew Jarvis. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I wanted to touch a little bit on the gun death statistics mentioned earlier, and they're used to mislead uneducated voters because the majority of gun deaths in America are self-inflicted suicide with no violence to anyone else, and that is a problem. Gun violence is a problem, but it's not coming from legal gun owners. To address a gun buyback doesn't make any sense because the government can't buy back something that they never owned, and that's, gun owners' legal property. I also greatly oppose the proposed language requiring all firearms and residences to be secured and locked up, because that takes away what a gun is used for, to protect yourself, to protect your family, and to stop violence against criminals who are already committing violent felonies. I oppose the draft to require liability insurance for gun owners. All these are unconstitutional, and people who own guns who follow. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Michelle Drodger. You may begin.
Hello. Hold on a sec. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to thank the County Commission for your action on gun violence prevention. I'm a volunteer with Moms Demand Action. Personally, I've had 2 work experiences that have enlightened me to the great value of the measures at issue, both requiring the signage and the safe storage of guns. I've trained and worked at a suicide hotline as an advocate and as a mediator for the dependency court, where I personally witnessed the reality of domestic violence or self-inflicted harm that happens solely due to sudden triggers of anger or rage or emotions resulting in rash decisions that impact negatively and violently so many lives. And when I meet with these individuals after this happens, where they lose control and they are full of regret, they are full of regret because of their violence and reckless behavior that resulted in great loss to them and many around. And I shudder to think what would happen if they had easy access to a gun. This is not anti-gun measures, but anti-violence measures. That's very logical measures, but sure, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Jessica Craven. You may begin.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
Oh,
can you hear me?
yes, go ahead.
Yes, okay, sorry. Hi, I'm Jessica Craven. I'm a member of Moms Demand Action and also an elected member of the Los Angeles County Democratic Party. I am in strong support of all of these gun violence prevention measures, especially number 15. We know that safe storage saves lives, and contrary to what some of the people have been saying, that gun violence only affects suicides. So preliminary 2022 data showed suicides accounted for 56% of firearm deaths. Homicides were 41%. And also firearm deaths per 100,000 people grew 13% between 2019 and 2020. Those are the years we have the most recent data for, we are losing tens of thousands of people every year that we don't need to lose. You guys who want to carry guns can have your guns, but for God's sake, we get to have some regulations around them, just like we do cars and just like we do every other thing we use in this country. Gun owners who want to just have a free-for-all, that they don't get to just have their way. We get to protect ourselves and our children as well. Safe storage in particular will prevent all kinds of crimes, suicides, school shootings. It's hugely important, and I want to support you guys in doing the right data-backed thing. Thank you very much for your service.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Madam Chair, there are no other speakers in the queue to address the board.
Okay, let's go to
ourselves and our children as well. Safe storage in particular will prevent all kinds of crimes, suicides, school shootings. It's hugely important, and I want to support you guys in doing the right data-backed thing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
for your
much.
service.
Next speaker, please.
Madam Chair, there are no other speakers in the queue to address the board.
Okay, let's go to our in-person speakers. Welcome, and go ahead.
Good morning. I am Katrina Williams. I'm the CEO of Changing the Faces of Homelessness, and I'm just here to speak real quickly about gun regulation. 30 years ago, my best friend was murdered in the streets from gun violence, and last week I had the opportunity to meet with his mother 30 years later, who is now a widow and is now by herself and alone because she lost her only son to gun violence. And I'm just here today to recommend that we do something as far as implementing services with gun regulation for our young people, where they need a mindset of change so they can have a different strategy about life, so we can bring unity within our community with our young people. Lord, Miss Davis is now alone, and a mother, a single mom alone. And I am now speaking for Ms. Davis as a mother who lost a child and will be alone in 30 years as well. Let's make a difference and bring a change.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Yes, the
Good
Honorable. Good morning. Good morning. The Honorable three-time Ninth Circuit winner, Red Chief Hunt, for Black History Month. Get rid of the guns. Get rid of the guns. Best way. Regulation, however you guys see it, let's make a difference. Nobody needs to be gunned down in no uncircumstantial situations. So I want to vote on this. Please, let's get rid of these guns. Board of Supervisors and Madam Chair, give me an vote on this one. Red Chief Hunt, love you guys. And Black History, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Stacy Mosley, and I'm a volunteer with the California chapter of Moms Demand Action. First of all, I want to thank the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors for introducing all of these motions, and I'm in full support of item 15 to help keep our families safer from gun violence. Despite claims from the gun industry that firearm ownership keeps us safe, the evidence tells a different story. The overwhelming research points to the fact that more guns do not make us safer, and if it was true, we would be the safest country in the world. I do not consider myself a survivor, but many people I love are. My mother is a survivor of gun violence, having witnessed a murder-suicide by gun as a child. My sister is a domestic violence survivor where a gun was used to threaten and harm her. And my husband is a survivor of an unintentional shooting where an unsecured firearm was available, loaded at a sleepover while he was a child. So please, I am in full support of item 15 for securing firearms. We don't have to live this way, and we certainly don't have to die this way. Thank you for
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you to the Commission today for your action on gun violence prevention. My name is Ashley Annette Castillo. I am a volunteer with Moms Demand Action as well as Students Demand Action. Gun violence is something that has personally affected me since the age of 6. I waved at a gunman through my school fence, not knowing minutes later he would attempt to enter the school armed to end all of our lives. Or less than a minute away from home, being held at gunpoint outside of my corner liquor store. This week is National Gun Violence Survivors Week, and I would like to highlight that these are not just numbers or statistics, but they are people like myself. Gun violence is the #1 killer of children and teens in America, and my generation has been forced to grow up living in fear of gun violence in communities that should be safe. And we know that it doesn't have to be this way. And that's why I am here today in support of secure storage of firearms, especially in private homes. 18,000 youth are shot and injured or killed every single year due to gun violence. And every day we lose more of our family members and our friends and peers. It shouldn't have to be this way, and we won't allow it to be.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Yes, hello, and thank you for having me here. I am a survivor. I am also a survivor fellow of Moms Demand Action, Every Town Survivor. My name is Donna Brown. My call to action is the murder of my son, Clifton Hebert, Jr., who was murdered on spring break at the age of 22. The murder of my son, Clifton Hebert, is an epidemic, destroying neighborhoods, destroying families' life. My case for action today is safe storage, item 15. It's traumatic to bury a child that had his future planned as a single mother, planning to the chapter of his next life was to plan to do his internship in DC as an attorney, but instead I find myself shopping for a casket to lay my son to rest. This is not what I signed up for.
Thank you. Thank you. We're sorry for your loss. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Jane Gould. I'm with Moms Demand Action, and I want to thank you for bringing up the issues in item 15. Fully support it. Just recently, I spoke to a friend of mine who's a teacher at a Los Angeles high school, where within the last 2 months, students brought in guns to school, which they had taken from unsecured locations. The students were arrested, but not before roaming the schools. Other students had videos of them waving the guns and pointing it at them. So it's a very important issue, and I don't think people are quite aware of it, not to mention the terror that students go through every time there is a drill for a shooter, an active shooter in the school. Anyway, again, thank you for your support. I feel fortunate to live in a place like Los Angeles in California where they do take gun regulations seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Lupo. I'm a licensed clinical social worker who works in our schools, and I'm also a volunteer with Moms Demand. Thank you to the Los Angeles Board of Supervisors for your action on gun violence prevention. And I'm here to express my support on item 15. I'm also here because I'm a mother of 2. I have a 4-year-old and a 5-month-old in the back. And I want to feel safe going to school, to work. I want to feel safe sending my child to preschool, sending her to elementary school. And I want to know that I will bring her back home safely. And I know that there are many families who have lost loved ones to gun violence. Every year, more than 43,000 Americans are killed with a gun. As a mental health professional, I also speak in support of gun dealer ordinance as an important step to educate consumers about the risks of firearm ownership. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Well, God hates you when our law punishes guns. The problem with guns is not the gun. The problem is with society and the people that don't know how to use a gun. And we continue to push this bureaucracy of incompetence and incoherence because we see that in the future, when the Chinese bring the United States down to its doom, you will understand why you took our rights away to protect ourselves and hold guns as a constitutional value to protect ourselves, to protect our country, and to protect our well-being where we live. But because of this engagement under United States versus Bagdasarian on one of the items versus a .50 caliber to his head, that is not offensive. That is a fact, and you should get your facts correct. And remember that it's Carrot Bass who's killing people on a daily basis, leaving them on the street versus guns. Here are my documents for the record.
Thank you. Thank you. We will take those. Next speaker, please.
Good morning. My name is Stephen Lamb. I've owned a gun since I was 7 years old. I grew up going to Harry W. Sanford's gunsmithing shop, starting when I was 5. Mr. Sanford always taught us young kids that guns weren't toys. They were dangerous weapons to be used for a purpose. Keeping kids out of gun stores doesn't make us safe. Locking guns in people's houses so they can't use them to protect themselves, particularly those of us who live where the sheriffs are, where we have very long response times, and particularly in Black and Latino neighborhoods where crime is rampant, is not going to protect anyone. Forcing people to get insurance isn't going to keep crazy people from killing people. They don't care. They're crazy. You have to understand that harassing people who are using guns legally makes nobody safer. Thank you.
Next speaker, please. Oh, we're going back to the. Are we going back to the phone now? Okay, we have somebody on the phone. Please go ahead.
Our next speaker is Marsnet. You may begin.
Yes, good morning. My name is Osvaldo Mason. I am a Second Amendment instructor and advocate, and I am a resident of Pomona, California. What I am here to tell you all today is that I have first-hand experience of the real-life consequences that gun control has in the lives of the good people, good residents of LA County. We are already overburdened by gun control at the state level and at the federal level. And I can tell you from my students, who are mostly women, who want to have the ability to defend themselves with defensive tools of their choosing, that none of these gun controls help them to be any safer. None of you in the Board of Supervisors are going to be there when somebody needs to utilize a firearm and have it accessible for their self-defense. Please, this is not your thing. The second.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any other speakers in the queue?
No, we have.
Yes, our next speaker. I'm sorry, are we still on the phone?
Yes.
Okay, our next speaker is Maria Del Rio. You may begin.
Hi, good morning. I was having a little bit of technical difficulties, but I'm glad I was able to get on. Good morning, all. My name is Maria Teresa Del Rio. I'm the mayor of the city of Hawaiian Gardens. First, I want to give my most sincere condolences to the families that lost loved ones in the mass shootings. My thoughts and prayers are with you during this difficult time. I want to thank Ms. Hahn and Ms. Solis for bringing this item to agenda. I strongly support the need to take action to implement stronger regulations on gun control to protect our communities. Also, we also need to learn to see the signs to help those that are in need to prevent such tragedies. If we all work together, we can achieve change. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Freddie Pablo. You may begin.
Hi, this is Freddie Pablo speaking. I'm here to state that I do not support the ban on sale of all .50 caliber guns and ammunition in unincorporated LA County. However, as a community, I agree that we should regulate laws that directly affect gun violence. I believe this includes implementing a zoning buffer of 1,000 feet between gun stores and any child safety area, whether it be schools, daycares, parks, or playgrounds. And I also agree that we should implement a whole host of new licensing requirements for gun stores. This includes mandatory inventory collection, fingerprinting collection, security cameras, and prohibiting the presence of children. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Denise Bellamel. Please, you may begin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Denise Villamil. I'm the Executive Director at Southern California Crossroads. We do a lot of work in the county doing violence prevention, and unfortunately, we deal with gun violence almost daily. We are thankful to Supervisor Hunt for the motion, and we're in full support of more regulation for guns and not having access near our youth, our children, not only as a provider and the nonprofit world doing this work, but as a mother, because my daughter does fear going to school because unfortunately mass shootings and gun violence are very prevalent and real life and part of our day-to-day. I'm in full support of the regulations and look forward to seeing our county continue to advance in setting the standard for our country.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
All right. Our next speaker is Mate de la Vega. You may begin.
Hello, my name is Mykesha de la Vega, and I work for Southern California Crossroads. I'm a case manager here, and I'm calling support for item number 2. Throughout my time in Southern California Crossroads, we've been helping people that have been a victim of a crime, and day in and day out, I see people that have been shot because of guns, and I think that's a big issue that needs to stop. Another reason is my father was killed of gun violence, and I think that it's something that we need to stop now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Madam Chair, there are no other speakers in the queue to address the board.
Okay, have we exhausted all the speakers, both in person and, okay, great. Thank you for those who called in. We'll now begin, colleagues, with item 2, establishing ordinances to enhance gun regulation in Los Angeles County, and then the related ordinances, item 61 and 62, County Code Title 13, Public Peace, Morals, and Welfare Amendments, which I held. And then following that discussion, we'll take up item 8 and then 15. It was June of last year, shortly after 19 elementary school students were killed in the mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas, that I introduced a motion along with Supervisor Solis, asking our county council to explore options for us to enhance gun regulations in unincorporated LA County. I did not imagine that when it came time to implement those regulations, we would be in the wake of the deadliest mass shooting in Los Angeles County's history. But here we are, facing a gun violence epidemic that continues to devastate our communities. So today we're taking steps forward in our fight against gun violence. The motion before you introduces 2 brand new ordinances to hopefully be approved today. The first will ban the sale of all 50 caliber guns and ammunition in unincorporated LA County. These are the giant bullets that are half an inch thick and really long. They tear through bodies and cause terrible destruction that just destroys someone's insides. They were developed for combat situations, and there's no reason for a civilian to be able to purchase and use them. And the second will prohibit people from carrying firearms on all LA County property. This means even if the person has a concealed carry permit, which have unfortunately become easier to get since the Supreme Court case, they are prohibited from bringing them onto county property, like our beaches, our parks, our playgrounds, our plazas, and county department buildings. There is an exception for law enforcement and active military members. These 2 ordinances are before us to vote on today as the first hearing, and they will go into effect 30 days after the second hearing, which will be at the next board meeting on February 28th. But we're also voting to move forward 2 other ordinances that need to go through a little bit of longer process. The first directs our Department of Regional Planning to establish zoning restrictions to enact a 1,000-foot buffer zone between gun stores and areas where children gather, like schools, parks, daycares, and to establish a 1,000-foot buffer zone between gun stores. Because this includes a zoning change, it does have to go through our planning process and is not yet ready for us to vote on, but the Department of Regional Planning will finalize the ordinance and then bring it back to us. And finally, this motion directs our treasurer and tax collector to move forward with enhancing the regulation of firearm and ammunition dealers in unincorporated county. This ordinance amendment will include various regulations for firearm dealers, including restricting minors' presence in stores that sell guns, requiring dealers to maintain a fingerprint log, requiring dealers to install and maintain security cameras, and requiring dealers to keep an up-to-date inventory of the guns that they have, and requiring them to notify purchasers and customers of the dangers of guns. It's worth reiterating that all of these ordinances will only apply to unincorporated LA County, which is where our authority lies. But I hope our action today will inspire other cities in the county to take action in their own communities. I believe we all need to do whatever we can in our own jurisdictions to keep our communities safe from gun violence. Supervisor Solis, would you like to make comments?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for allowing me to be your co-author on this very pivotal moment for us in the County of Los Angeles. And you laid out very clearly what it is we have to do, and thank you for being a partner with me on many of these issues. And I know how important they are to all of us, especially because we primarily have jurisdiction over the unincorporated areas, which I now represent, I think, one of the largest that after redistricting now, we have Hacienda Heights and Roland Heights, and of course East Los Angeles and other parts of the county. I hope that we can lead by example and that other cities will take to heart what it is we're doing today, and that they will also understand that we are moving towards better control of at least those firearms that we know can create deadly after effects. And we've seen it demonstrated 2 weeks ago in the city of Monterey Park in the 1st District, and could have resulted in even a larger loss of life had the individual not been taken down, his arm taken down by a young man named Brandon Tsai. So I do want to say that it is important for us to understand how we got here. So I think something we have to understand is I couldn't believe, like most people, that just 38 days of the new year, this country has endured about 60 mass shooting incidents. 60. Today, you'll hear the other 3 gun safety motions, which I'm also co-authoring. But I believe that this board and the will that we have will collectively show our unity. And that's what I think that makes LA County strong because of that. And we've heard the voices of families and members who have lost friends, families, and others because of the lack of good gun safety regulations at all levels of government. This specific motion before us is a follow-up motion to one that Chair Hahn and I did in September of last year, as you noted, and directing County Council to prepare a report back and language on the ordinance to prohibit, as was stated, the sale of caliber rifles and prohibit the carrying or possession of firearms on county property. That makes sense. Today, we're taking that step to take language that County Council has prepared and to vote on it and to embed it into our county's code. I will continue to provide remarks on other motions that are before the board today, but without a doubt, we have to move forward on gun safety regulations. And until Congress acts, I think we should all be very clear. The Board of Supervisors will do everything we can, I believe, legally and jurisdictionally to keep our residents and our communities safer from gun violence. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor. And tonight, I believe at President Biden's State of the Union address, he will be having 2 of your residents from your district. I believe the former Mayor Henry Lowe is going to be the guest of Senator Padilla, and then Brandon, the young man who stopped the violence in Alhambra, was invited by President Biden. So maybe just their presence tonight will remind members of Congress of the reality that we live in. Supervisor Barger.
Thank you. And I agree with what's been said. I think one of the frustrations I have that no one talks about is what about the illegal guns around the street? Who is or what are we doing to combat that issue? And if you go to our probation camps or even to our jails and find out how many of those individuals are in there because of gun charges, I think it'd be interesting about how many of those guns are illegally purchased. We do nothing to address that issue. And I think it's great that we are addressing what we can, but we also have the ability to work with the sheriff to put together task force because, Supervisor Hahn, when you did your gun buyback, I would love to know how many of those guns were legally purchased. A lot of them were illegally. I mean, I think these are stats that we should look at because, you know, I'm all for addressing gun violence, and there's no question that this is becoming far too much of a routine. Far too often we turn on the TV and we hear about mass shootings. And in the case in Monterey Park, it was, I think, a legally bought gun out of another state that was illegally altered and would be illegal in the state of California with a silencer. And so you know, maybe I'll bring in a motion then to have us address the fact that parts are being purchased and guns are being put together illegally. So when we do things like this, my concern is, and I'm going to support it, but my concern is that we are not getting to the root cause of what is going on. And that in fact, it's a false sense of security because the reality is people are purchasing parts and building guns in this county legally. Legally purchasing, illegally using. And so, you know, I don't think this is a battle against the Second Amendment. I really do think it is about responsible gun ownership. And that's why I'm going to support it, because I think that we do need to recognize that there are things we can do in the unincorporated area. But I also would ask this board collectively to recognize that there is also a serious situation going on in communities where families and youth are impacted by guns that are illegally purchased on the street with no serial numbers, no way to trace them. And I, for one, want to work with our sheriff to figure out how we can combat that issue as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'm all in with you on, you know, combating the illegal purchasing of parts. And by the way, in the gun backs that I've done, we got ghost guns, we got all manner of illegal guns, even in our gun buyback. But you know, even one widow brought in 15 legally purchased guns after her husband died. She found them and didn't know what to do with them. And so the fact that we in LA County were offering, you know, to buy them back from her, to me, it also says anytime, even if it's a legal gun, the chances that somebody can break in and steal it and then use it for harm is also out there. So I think it's a several prong approach, but I appreciate your.
Madam Chair, I forgot to ask one question before. I know it's to Supervisor Horvath, but when we talk about banning CCW, individuals with CCWs, you know, we've got DAs and judges who have CCWs for good reasons and are going into county buildings. So I would hope that we would look, when you talk about exceptions, military, law enforcement, I think there are going to be exceptions beyond that. And I just know for a fact that judges definitely do, and they park in our garage, which is county owned. I think the state owns the courts now. But the DA has offices in county owned buildings. And there are those that need.
That's a good point, and I'm looking at Supervisor Solis, who feels like that might be a reasonable exception as well. So we'll look at that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you.
Supervisor Mitchell, and then Supervisor Horvath.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would just agree with you and Supervisor Barger. I think this isn't an either or. It's all of the above, and I think our ultimate collective goal is to change culture. You know, it's not lost on any of us, I'm sure, that Our gun homicide rate is 26 times higher than our next closest industrialized nation. And so it is about our culture. We had some callers talk about, the Second Amendment, and I think that there is a mass, broad interpretation of what the Second Amendment allows. It does say for an armed militia. And so I'm completely supportive, and thank you both for bringing these forward. To hear the public testimony on both sides. The notion of reducing availability across the board, be it licensed, be it illegally obtained, be it illegally assembled, where you can legally buy pieces, and then when you assemble it, it becomes a ghost gun and illegal to have. I think that we have a responsibility at every level of government to do all that we can. This notion that one caller said, it's suicides that are the top. Well, gun violence is broadly defined. Suicide by firearm is gun violence. And so the goal, I think, collectively, is to reduce the availability for those that have them, to make sure they secure them properly. All of us have stories of those curious, precocious kids who find the firearm in grandpa's house and mom and dad's house, and the unthinkable happens. And so to create opportunities where we encourage, insist, demand, as an elected body can, that they be stored safely, I think is appropriate. I also look forward to figuring out how we can invest in supporting education and the critical work of community-based violence prevention efforts. Because again, I think not only must we attack it through ordinance and statute, but create a culture shift in this nation, in this county, to create the kind of safety that all of those mothers deserve to have their children be able to go to school and not have that kind of fear. Very proud of the work you two have done and proud to support your motions today. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Horvath.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and especially thank you to you and obviously Supervisor Solis for your leadership in bringing forward common sense gun safety measures for every community here in LA County. I know that we have items 2, 61, and 62, which are related, item 8 and 56A, in addition to the item that we authored with Supervisor Solis 15. So we have a lot of items here today that are all focused on this all-important issue. And I also want to acknowledge Senator Feinstein, who is recognized in your motion as well, for her leadership at the federal level on gun safety. She has been a trailblazer in many ways, and her leadership has been important in this conversation and must be renewed at the federal level. And I know that today I want to also thank our friends at Moms Demand from every town, from Women Against Gun Violence. I was a former board member there and proud to be an approved candidate of Moms Demand sitting here before you today because we need to do everything we absolutely can to prevent and end gun violence in our community. And all of our motions will do exactly that today. We know that the clear warning signs about the dangers of gun violence being placed on signage in places where guns are sold will serve as yet another reminder what can happen if we don't have responsible gun ownership. We also need to make sure that guns are stored properly, safely, locked in containers where guns must be safely stored because often it is children who pay the price, and this is absolutely unacceptable. Shared earlier today, this is actually something that's very personal to me. Someone I played with as a child lost his life because his parents, they had a gun that they stored on a shelf in a closet. The closet was not locked, the container was not locked, and as a child he accessed that gun, and his parents' hearts break every
single day knowing that they could have done something to protect their child's safety. So this is a personal mission. This is something that's very important. I'm grateful to have so much support on that part of our motion today. We also must make sure that we explore liability insurance requirement for gun owners, which will promote accountability for individuals who choose to own guns. We'll explore also creating a uniform database to track who has guns, so law enforcement know if a person might be armed when they're responding to a call for service. Better data collection can save lives as well. We know that there has been so much heartbreak, so much tragedy, as we have heard in the comments shared here today. The fact that we, in just a couple of weeks, had the tragedy in Monterey Park, the tragedy in Half Moon Bay, in Benedict Canyon, this is in our control to end. And all of these measures are steps taken. Will they be enough? We'll see, but they are steps in the right direction to make sure that we are doing all that we can and moving us closer to keeping each and every person safe in our county. My brother attended the Route 91 concert in Las Vegas, and while I'm grateful that he and his girlfriend were among the lucky ones that night, we know the devastating impacts of all who are touched by gun violence, no matter what its form and how they experience it. So the tireless advocates who are here with us today, the people who continue this fight each and every day, I thank you for your leadership and your dedication to this issue, and count all of us as your partners in this effort to ensure that we're protecting our communities from gun violence once and for all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so again, it's a little bit confusing, but item 2 is now going to be before us. And then after this, we will take up 18 and 15, which we can also discuss as well. And the public has already made their comments on those items. Okay, item 2 is before us. I'm going to move, seconded by Supervisor Solis, to approve this item. Executive Officer, please call the roll.
Item 2 is before you. Supervisor Solis.
Aye.
Supervisor Solis, aye. Supervisor Mitchell.
Aye.
Supervisor Mitchell, aye. Supervisor Horvath.
Aye.
Supervisor Horvath, aye. Supervisor Barger.
Aye.
Supervisor Barger, aye. Supervisor Hahn.
Aye.
Supervisor Hahn, aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, now we got to take up both of the ordinances that go along with this. So item 61 is before us. Also, I will move it, seconded by Supervisor Solis, to approve this item. Executive Officer, please call the roll.
Item 61 is before you. Supervisor Solis.
Aye.
Supervisor Solis, aye. Supervisor Mitchell.
Aye.
Supervisor Mitchell, aye. Supervisor Horvath.
Aye.
Supervisor Horvath, aye. Supervisor Barger.
Aye.
Supervisor Barger, aye. Supervisor Hahn.
Aye.
Supervisor Hahn, aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, one more as it relates to this item, 62. Again, I'll move, seconded by Supervisor Solis, to approve this item. Executive Officer, please call the roll.
Item 62 is before you. Supervisor Solis.
Aye.
Supervisor Solis, aye. Supervisor Mitchell.
Aye.
Supervisor Mitchell, aye. Supervisor Horvath.
Aye.
Supervisor Horvath, aye. Supervisor Barger.
Aye.
Supervisor Barger, aye. Supervisor Hahn.
Aye.
Supervisor Hahn, aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you for the support, colleagues. Okay, now we're going to move to item 8, support for key federal gun safety legislation, banning the sale of assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, and raising the age to purchase assault weapons, which was held by Supervisor Solis.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Once again, I want to thank you also for being my co-author on this motion. Just earlier today, this morning, we held a press conference in solidarity for the victims and survivors of the recent shootings, including those in Monterey Park. And I want to thank Chair Hahn, Supervisor Horvath, Monterey Park Mayor Jose Sanchez, Alhambra Mayor Adele Andrade Sadler, the DA Gascon, and Assistant Sheriff Holly Francisco for joining us today. It truly is a new day to have that type of unity all working together. Colleagues, I'm proud to be on the board that takes what is happening in our country and our county seriously. And I'm talking about the mass harm, trauma, and loss that we have faced due to gun-related violence. I've said before that living in America means we are all at risk of becoming a victim of gun-related incidents of violence. Earlier, I shared that we have endured already over 54 mass shooting incidents. That's almost twice a day. This is impacting all of us, regardless of our age and where we're from. Children who must engage in active shooter drills or have to remain in place until their schools are cleared due to threats. Older adults who were enjoying a night out, dancing and celebrating with their friends. Farm workers who were trying to make a living to support themselves and their families. Following recent action by the board to declare gun violence a public health crisis today, I'm putting forward one of 4 different motions to support local, state, and federal legislation to strengthen gun regulations. This motion, with Supervisor Hahn as a co-author, is directing our legislative affairs team to submit a 5-signature letter of support for Senator Dianne Feinstein's legislation. The bill is a reintroduction of one she and then Senator Joe Biden authored back in the 90s to ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. I will end my remarks by sharing with you that Brandon said at the Alhambra Lunar New Year event I attended 2 weekends ago, in front of a large crowd of attendees, media and political leaders, he provided his first public remarks since saving countless lives when he wrestled a gun out of the perpetrator's hand following the Monterey Park Dance Studio massacre. Alhambra was just 5 minutes away. Brandon stated with so much passion that we, the people of the nation, need to take action against gun violence. Brandon, I can't agree with you more. This board's track record is strong. Long before this tragedy, this board has taken strong action that supported gun safety-related legislation. The board has and will continue to do all it can to keep our residents safe. However, we also need all leaders across the country, and it's about bipartisanship to make things happen, to take a stand with the victims and survivors of gun-related violence and make significant changes to our gun laws at the state level and, yes, at the federal level. And that's what we hope to do today. I thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you again for being my co-author.
Thank you. And as a co-author, I'll make a few remarks. Thank you again, Supervisor Solis, for inviting me to be the co-author on this motion with you. We're frustrated here in California. We're doing everything we can at a local level, especially with what we're just doing today, supervisors, to keep our communities safe from gun violence. And yet the federal government can't even act to pass an assault weapon ban that we know works. We know it works because it was passed before and it had a direct impact on the number of gun deaths. And then when it was repealed, gun deaths went up, and they continue to do so as Congress refuses to act. You know, I only served in Congress 5.5 years, but the number of mass shootings just during the time that I was there was shocking to me. And every time there was a mass shooting, we would stand up on the House floor and have a moment of silence and give our thoughts and prayers to the victims and the families. Then we would sit back down and it would be business as usual. Never once taking up common sense gun legislation, at least the time I was there. And I'll never forget when after the Orlando nightclub shooting in 2016, you know, again, we just did not want to stand up again and offer thoughts and prayers. And Representative John Lewis decided to lead a sit-in on the House floor to try and force the Republican majority to vote on gun regulation legislation. We sat there for 24 hours all night long, and they even, the majority even turned off the cameras so we wouldn't be being able to give our speeches on the floor. They still refused to vote on the legislation, and we knew that if that legislation would be brought up, it would pass. There was enough bipartisan support to pass it, but we never got the chance to vote on it. So I really want to thank Senator Feinstein for her courage in reintroducing the assault weapon ban, and I pray that this time it moves forward. And again, we've just experienced right here in LA County the worst mass shooting in our history. in Monterey Park. And we know at least one of the guns the gunman had was illegal here in California. But there's other places where that gun can be purchased legally. Lax federal gun laws continue to impede our ability here in California to keep our residents safe. And we will do what we can with our authority to respond to this violence and work to prevent the next one. But we know that only a massive overhaul of federal gun policy can change and prevent gun violence in our nation. So, our Supervisor Barger.
No, if you get a chance to read the article today in the LA Times about Brandon, read it. It's he's an incredibly young man, and he's went to my high school, I might say, and is a neighbor. But he is a pretty remarkable young man, and I think that as time goes on, he's gonna need a lot of support moving forward. And that was my takeaway from the article. He's quite an amazing person. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
What high school did you go to? Ms. Barger, what high school did you go to?
San Marino, Titan.
The Titans. Titans. I was going to ask you what the mascot was. Okay.
Well, I said it, Titan.
Seeing no other supervisors wanting to comment on item 8, it's moved by Supervisor Solis, and I will second it to approve this item. Executive Officer, please call the roll.
Item 8 is before you. Supervisor Solis?
Aye.
Supervisor Solis, aye. Supervisor Mitchell?
Aye.
Supervisor Mitchell, aye. Supervisor Horvath?
Aye.
Supervisor Horvath, aye. Supervisor Barger?
Aye.
Supervisor Barger, aye. Supervisor Hahn?
Aye.
Supervisor Hahn, aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Strengthening gun regulations in Los Angeles County, which was held by Supervisor Horvath.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I shared my comments earlier sort of all together, but I'm proud to wear orange today as a person standing for the end of gun violence. I haven't earned the right to wear red, but I thank our moms who stand in solidarity to make sure that this issue remains visible, present, top of mind until we root out gun violence in all of its forms in our communities. We thank you for your leadership. And I want to thank my co-author, Supervisor Solis, for working together on this item, and I'm happy to turn it to her.
Thank you.
Supervisor Solis.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you again, Supervisor Horvath, for allowing me to be your co-author on the motion, and also for attending this morning's press conference. Thank you, and our guests in the audience as well. Despite being the newest supervisor on the board, you, like many of us, are a big ally on gun safety legislation. So we thank you, and we thank your constituents for giving us the opportunity to have you here with us. The motion, though, however, we're talking about today, not only supports past actions that this board has put forward to ensure that we keep our community safe and the residents of LA County safer from gun violence, but I'd also like to highlight it directs our county council to draft an ordinance to require all firearms in a residence to be securely stored in a locked or container or disabled with the trigger lock. We know that we always have gun owners, but what we need are owners who will be responsible with the guns that they do have. They may know how to operate their weapon, but others may see them, access them, intentional or not, and should not be able to do this with such ease. We have unfortunately heard of so many tragedies of kids, as we heard stories and stories, getting hold of their parents' guns or shooting themselves or another child. According to a Johns Hopkins Center for Gun Violence Solutions, they report that nearly 500 people die of unintentional firearm injuries. Unintentional firearm injuries account for about 37% of non-fatal firearm injuries. And Americans are 4 times more likely to die from an unintentional gun injury, and unsafely stored firearms increase the risk of unintentional firearm deaths. At the last board meeting, I read in a motion that declared gun violence a public health crisis, which it is. From a public health perspective and approach, we have to center on the idea of prevention. That's why this board, and we know it's trying today very much so, to do everything we can to keep our community safe and prevent further gun-related harm and injuries. I also ask respectively for your aye vote on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, thank you, Supervisor Horvath. And thank you for working with my office to add your first directive about signage to the work that our treasurer tax collector will be doing to enhance licensing requirements for all of our gun stores in unincorporated as it relates to the motion that we had. And I hope this will help coordinate the process and make sure that we're moving forward together on uniform gun regulations. Now, I'm all for safe storage. I think there's too many instances of where, kids get access, as you said, to someone in the house's gun. And I'm going to ask County Council this. It's my understanding, when Supervisor Solis, when you and I first introduced our motion back in 2022, we asked County Council to look at the idea of safe storage. And we were told that it would likely be unconstitutional based on the recent Bruin decision at the Supreme Court. But I understand we do have a state law for safe storage requirements for everyone who have kids that live in the house. But what this motion is asking you to draft is an ordinance that would have general safe storage for everyone, even without kids. So I know you're going to give us a report back and you're going to tell us all this, but it's piqued my curiosity on why the state law could stand on safe, and you might want to even explain what the Supreme Court decision meant and why they erred on the side of not requiring safe storage.
Thank you, Supervisor, for the question. You're correct. There is a California state law that does impose criminal liability on gun owners who fail to safely store a firearm in the residence or premises where a child or an adult who is prohibited from possessing firearms could access it. That's the current law. With respect to general safe storage, there is neither the state nor the federal law imposes such general requirements. So that is something that we will have to, it is a report back as you indicated, without waiving the attorney-client privilege any further. We'll continue to research that, but you are correct in terms of the United States Supreme Court Bruin decision. It does look towards traditionally held requirements. The question would be whether this would fall into that category. We will research that and report back.
Right, because my understanding the decision was if you have a right to protect yourself and you have a right to own a gun, the fact that they opined that you'd have to be able to access it quickly. So any going through a lock or a key would somehow impede on your ability to quickly protect yourself in a moment of danger. Was that the thinking?
Well, the Bruin decision dealt more with the good cause requirement in the state of California, not necessarily that in particular, but again, that is something we'll research.
Yeah, it just seems to me if the state law is standing for safe storage if you have a child or someone who shouldn't have access, I don't understand why general storage, but you're going to research that for us. Okay.
Yes, Supervisor.
Thank you. Okay, any other supervisor? Supervisor Mitchell and Supervisor Horvath and then Mitchell.
Just to follow up on that, there are jurisdictions that do have safe storage laws already in place, including municipalities right here in Los Angeles County. So there are laws on the books that are already doing this, and we'll get further guidance from County Council, but these laws are in place in some places.
Yeah, because again, we wanted to do that in last year, and we were told it would be unconstitutional. So it'll be very interesting to see your analysis. Supervisor Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it was my understanding that some of those jurisdictions, some of those municipalities had their ordinances in place prior to the Supreme Court ruling, so that may have made a difference. But in listening to what the state has done in terms of households with children, I wonder if, we could minimally, depending upon what council comes back with, at least expand that to households that,
have people that act like kids?
Well, that. Or, are likely to have, children visit. If there are ways in which we could talk about that, because, when I was in the legislature, Supervisor Barger, Senator Portantino brought a bill before us where decarcerate girls and young women, which was held by Supervisor Solis. For members of the public on the telephone, please press 1 then 0 now to comment on this item, item 9, ending the incarceration of girls. Supervisor Solis.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and also for agreeing to be my co-author on this. This isn't a new issue for many of us on the board, but it's one that I think is very, very important for all of us. And quite frankly, it's really related to the decarceration of girls and young women in our probation detention facilities. The motion has 2 mandates for probation department. One is to apply the state's Office of Youth and Community Restoration and Vera Institute's grant. This is a great opportunity, I believe, that we should not pass up. Should LA County be a recipient of this grant, this would provide our department with technical assistance and funds up to $125,000 and up to $250,000 beyond the first year to implement reforms that lead to the decarceration of girls and young women. Since the motion my co-author and I passed in 2021 directing probation department to work with the public defender's office to decarcerate our girls, that population has actually increased. It didn't go down, it increased. Simply put, I am disappointed. Thus, the second directive of the motion will be ensuring that the probation department and partner agencies understand that this is a mandate coming from the board to find ways to safely decarcerate our girls and young women. Regardless of whether the county gets the grant, there's still a mandate for us to move forward. And in case folks haven't forgotten, we're dealing with repeated documentation that the very nature of incarcerating our youth, specifically girls and gender expansive youth, means they are particularly vulnerable to all forms of exploitation. Let me be clear. I'm committed to youth justice reform, and I'm committed to shrinking the footprint of the probation's camps and halls, especially given how low our incarcerated youth population is to date. Additionally, my office has had conversations with the probation chief about my expectation on this matter, and I'll continue to bring it up until it gets done. I can't stand by to let this issue lay by the wayside.
That occurred while they were detained as young girls in our probation camps and halls. I think my comment when I first read those was it made me sick to my stomach to read those. And the imbalance of power, the power dynamics where our girls and young women are particularly vulnerable as they're incarcerated really needs to end. I think this motion will allow us to double down on our commitment to re-examine the entire system of locking up girls. And it's disappointing since we've started this that the number of incarcerated girls has increased since we passed our motion in 2021. But I think this motion, again, will renew our focus and our efforts.
You are in queue.
This model of incarceration to an end. Thank you. Supervisor Barger.
Thank you. And I support this motion, but I just want to alert this board, and I talked to you, Supervisor Hahn, we have youth in our system that are in need of services beyond, quite frankly, right now what DCFS is able to provide that are not in our probation system
our motion in
because
2021, but I think this motion again will renew our focus and our effort to bring this model of incarceration to an end. Thank you. Supervisor Barger.
Thank you. And I support this motion, but I just want to alert this board, and I talked to you, Supervisor Hahn, we have youth in our system that are in need of services beyond, quite frankly, right now what DCFS is able to provide that are not in our probation system because we're implementing things that are trying to be more compassionate and understanding. But I just want this board to be aware of the fact that that our social workers are struggling with these youth. And while we're going to do this motion today, I think we need to task both our DCFS director as well as our probation director and mental health to put together something that is going to address these youth, because at some point they're going to age out of our system, and then we're not going to be talking about probation camps, we're going to be talking about our jails and our prisons. And we have an obligation, especially for our foster youth, to do what's right for them. And by no fault of their own are they in our system, but also no fault of their own do they have serious behavioral issues. Serious behavioral, I mean, like issues that go beyond putting them in a hotel and having DCFS social workers watch them. It is wrong. So I support this motion today, but it brings up a bigger issue. And I, for one, am working, and I talked to one of the social workers last night, and it's frightening. It's frightening. Each one of these children that we're talking about has a story to tell, and trauma is involved. So I just want to highlight that and put that on the record. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Horvath.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank you and Supervisor Solis for bringing this item forward and continuing to push for the end of incarceration of girls in LA County. We know that far too many young girls, women, and gender-expansive individuals are needlessly incarcerated in both our juvenile and adult custody facilities. And many of these young people are incarcerated for offenses that stem from trauma, unmet mental health needs, or because they're subjected to violent experiences. Too often, the custody settings subject girls and young women to further trauma and incidents of violence, which does nothing to help them heal, and it certainly doesn't do anything to end cycles of incarceration and violence. We know that girls and young women do best in community-based settings that focus on treatment, healing, and supportive services. And I hear Supervisor Barger making sure that we are addressing the issues that we're seeing with the appropriate kinds of responses. But overall, we have seen that incarceration has led to additional harms, not fewer. As of Friday of last week, there were 52 young women and girls in the halls and camps. This number is too high, and yet it is low enough to put our goal of decarceration within reach. I believe we can work towards this goal in partnership with the Office of Youth and Community Restoration, which was created as a part of the DJJ closure to support the transition to serving youth in their local communities. OICR shares our Care First Jail Last vision, is committed to supporting increased reliance on community-based responses and interventions. And so I look forward to hearing the outcome of our county's application to partner with OICR on the initiative to end incarceration for girls and young women, and I thank you for this motion, which I will be supporting.
Thank you. Supervisor Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank to both of you and Supervisor Solis for bringing this forward. You know, in addition to the services we expect to see our new Department of Youth Development plan, it's important to build out the full continuum of services recommended for youth justice, for youth in the Youth Justice Reimagined report. And to, you know, Supervisor Barger's point, making sure that we create safe, community-based, therapeutic housing options in the short term, like yesterday, is really important to ultimately get to this goal. We've got to have appropriate community-based settings to support the development and the nurture of the youth in our care, and in this instance, particularly girls. Shortly before I joined the board approved a motion that requested an implementation plan for several Youth Justice Reimagined recommendations, which included the creation of safe and secure healing centers. So within the limitations of state law, I really strongly encourage our new department and their partners to look at options for safe, community-based housing really as quickly as possible. Again, we needed it yesterday. So that will allow us to reduce the amount of time our young people spend in locked facilities because we have no other place to house them and treat them and provide them with the support.
So thank you, Supervisor Solis, for keeping girls in the forefront of our mind, particularly those that are touched by all of our systems, be it DCFS or our juvenile justice system. And again, encouraging these departments to do all that they can to build out developmentally appropriate, therapeutic beds and spaces for our young people to receive the treatment and support they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Executive Officer, please call the members of the public who've signed up to speak on item 9.
Will the following individual please come forward? Red Chief Hunt. Moderator, may we have the first remote speaker, please?
In Supervisorial District 5, in a terrible place for that, but it was also taking women from Los Angeles and bringing them out into a valley fever area, and yet we killed that. We did it because we persuaded the state and everyone that it was a terrible idea, and the supervisors agreed, so it got redone. Now we have to reinvent these camps and this system. It's not appropriate. It's hard because there are traumatized people, and we have to care for them one way or the other. The best and most effective way would be to have people, in the community intervening somehow and helping one another rather than taking and separating. Because the trauma we create is worse.
Prevan. Thank you. Sounds like you're on a runway. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Anthony Arnaz. You may begin.
Hi, my name is Anthony Arenas, and I'm a resident of District 3, and I'm speaking in favor of Agenda Item 9. I think that this motion is a critical step in ending the imprisonment of young women and halting their exposure to violence, punishment, and re-traumatization. I know that the Vera Institute has a long history of successful advocacy and policy work that advances freedom and promotes healing for incarcerated youth, and the county should take advantage of this opportunity to benefit from their expertise in decriminalizing and providing care for girls and gender-expansive young people. The county does not fulfill a care-first ideal by incarcerating and victimizing young girls and women in need of support. As Solis stated, motions must be followed by action, and I'll remember that for when the people inevitably show up to the board again and again demanding for a Care First LA promise but never made true. Barger,
Thank you.
How social services need funding.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Cynthia Gonzalez. You may begin.
Go ahead.
Hi. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
hello?
Go ahead.
Okay, hi, my name is Cynthia Gonzalez. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Cynthia, and I'm with Eastside Leads. It's a coalition here in the East Side. I wanted to first thank Supervisor Gila Solis for amending the motion to item 62A and requesting a 30-day report back to extend the emergency eviction protections. And I just wanted to, just quickly say before my time is up that although this is, although this is going to be extended and it's going to be reviewed, I feel one part that is missing would be to really make sure that...
Excuse me, I think you're on the wrong item. I don't even know if that item... we're on item 9, ending girls' incarceration.
Got it. Okay, I'm so sorry. I just got plugged in. At what time would it be item 16?
Yes. Is that item 16 that she's referring to? Yeah.
Yes.
16, yeah. Okay, so come back for that one. Okay. Next speaker on item 9.
Madam Chair, there are no other speakers in the queue to address the board. You are in queue.
In person, Red Chief Hunt.
Yes, the Red Chief Hunt. I do like what you guys are doing. Please end this please start the rehabilitation for these young women in this arena. Things like that. The youth are very important, especially young women today. It's not their fault. It's a lot of the parents' fault. A lot of have been born to drugs and stuff like that. So it's really not their fault. So I would like to have an aye vote on this one, but I encourage you guys and to keep this program going like that. The Red Chief Hunt, anything that helps the youth
Hi, I'm Katrina Williams. I'm the CEO from Changing the Face of Homelessness, and I just wanted to address the House.
A lot of them are being or have been born to drugs and stuff like that, so it's really not their fault. So I would like to have an aye vote on this one, but I encourage you guys and to keep this program going and stuff like that. The Red Chief Hunt, anything that helps the youth is encouraging and things like that. So please pass this with an aye vote. Thank all the Board of Supervisors and Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, I'm Katrina Williams. I'm the CEO from Change.
For you, Supervisor Solis? Aye. Supervisor Solis? Aye. Supervisor Mitchell?
Aye.
Supervisor Mitchell? Aye. Supervisor Horvath?
Aye.
Supervisor Horvath? Aye. Supervisor Barker?
Aye.
Supervisor Barker? Aye. Supervisor Hahn?
Aye.
Supervisor Hahn? Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, now we're going to move on when differences in economic status and education are taken into account. An evidence-based intervention for safer Black pregnancies and births really are doulas. Those who use doula services are less likely to have preterm or cesarean births, both of which are associated with higher infant mortality and are more likely to have a reduced need for medical pain control during labor, reduced symptoms of postpartum depression, are more likely to breastfeed their infants and for longer periods, and importantly, maternal satisfaction with their birth experience is higher when a doula supports her and is present. I was very excited to learn that the state enacted a doula Medi-Cal benefit January 1st of this year, which is an important step to increasing access to this life-saving service. Building off the impressive work already done by our very own Department of Public Health's African American Infant and Maternal Mortality Prevention Initiative, or AIM, this motion asks the department to explore creating a doula hub. The hub would provide technical support to doulas interested in becoming Medi-Cal providers and create a pool of quality Medi-Cal reimbursable providers which families can then access. Because it's a new benefit, we're not quite sure how statewide families will know about it and what kind of support doulas will receive in managing the Medi-Cal process, which can be complicated in and of itself. The hub would also be a framework for future maternal and infant health initiatives that incorporate the valuable perspectives of doulas and birthing parents while building support for some of the most vulnerable individuals in our communities. I'm very proud to put forth this motion in support of the joyous birth all families absolutely should be entitled to and deserve, but is often denied to far too many in the African American community. So again, our hope is that this will be a report back motion, which I hope will ultimately lead to future implementation motions. With that, I ask for my colleagues' support. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. And now I'm going to call on Supervisor Barger.
Thank you, and thank you, Supervisor Mitchell, for introducing this motion. I mentioned to you I have a dear friend who trained to be a doula. Increasing access to doula care is essential to the health and well-being of mothers and children across communities, but especially in areas with limited health care access. And unfortunately, in my district, up in the Antelope Valley, this has been a priority by DPH, African American Infant and Maternal Mortality Initiative, because of the fact that it's so rural and there is difficulty getting access to health care. So I appreciate the motion and the fact that it highlights the workforce needs. And we really should be collaborating with local community groups and schools to educate on the great opportunity to enter the healthcare workforce as a doula, something that I didn't know about until my friend explained to me what a doula is. And so I'm excited. When I saw this motion, I was excited because I actually knew what a doula does. Anyway, so I look forward to giving you an aye vote on this motion.
Thank you. Supervisor Hilda Solis.
Thank you. Yes, Madam Chair, I want to thank Supervisor Mitchell for introducing this very important motion. As we all know, birth equity is a crisis, both nationally and right here in LA County. And Black African American families and communities are experiencing the worst outcomes with respect to maternal and infant mortality. In the county, the Black infant mortality rate is over 3 times the rate of their white counterparts, and the Black maternal mortality rate is 4 times the white mortality rate. Equity has been the guiding principle in my own approach to the county's health response during both the pandemic and well before. The issue of birth equity has long been very important to many of us. That's why I was happy to see the Board of Supervisors unanimously approve a motion that I introduced back in January of 2020 to expand the doula services for birthing people who are on Medi-Cal, incarcerated, or at-risk populations. And in 2022, the county recommitted to the Related Nurse Family Partnership program through a motion that I also brought. Doulas have played a critical role in helping bring about better birth outcomes. They empower birthing people to communicate the needs to medical providers, leading to healthier families. And in 2021, I was glad to see that the state further expanded doula care as a Medi-Cal benefit. And I want to thank Supervisor Mitchell for helping advance this critical service, which I recognize has significant impact on her residents as well as other vulnerable birthing people across the county. I know this critical service will save lives, and I hope that this is an initiative that we can further expand upon. And it is perfect time in light of the state grant that the county was able to secure through a motion that I put forward to create a guaranteed income program for people who have high-risk pregnancies, prioritizing Black pregnant women on Skid Row beginning this summer. Thank you, and I will cast my vote in aye. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Horvath.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Supervisor Mitchell for introducing this motion and for all of your work at the state on these important issues. We know you have been a trailblazer leader, and we thank you for that. It is unacceptable that Black infant and maternal mortality rates are up 4 times higher compared with white mortality rates. This is regardless of education level, socioeconomic status, or geographic location. And it is my understanding that our County Department of Public Health's African American infant mortality has done a tremendous job in implementing and providing preventative initiatives designed to support Black birthing people, including doula services. Numerous studies have documented the benefits of having a doula present during labor. Doula services reduce the rate of preterm and cesarean births, decrease the need for pain control during birth, and decrease symptoms of postpartum depression. With doula care now a new Medi-Cal eligible benefit that took effect on January 1st, it's an opportune time to expand access to those services. We must be intentional about it. I am very supportive of the development of a hub to provide support to doula service providers on contracting and billing with managed care plans. We all know that billing and contracting with our managed care plans is not an easy task, especially for doula providers that have little to no expertise on these matters. We don't want administrative processes to be an impediment to providing Medi-Cal beneficiaries access to doula services. Additionally, we must continue to support and expand the African American infant and maternal mortality's capacity to support the doula benefit rollout. This, coupled with expanding and diversifying the county doula workforce through education and access, will ensure more availability of doula services throughout the county. It's imperative that we do everything that we can to ensure that every Medi-Cal eligible birthing person has access to a doula services if desired, and in particular, Black birthing people. We must eliminate the disproportionately high Black infant and maternal mortality rates. I see this as a tool in helping us get there. And given what we heard at our last meeting right here in our own chambers, we know more must be done here in Los Angeles County. This motion is an all-important advancement of safety and protections, and I'm prepared to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other supervisors that would like to comment on this, Executive Officer, please call the members of the public who signed up to speak on item 13.
Madam Chair, there are no members of the public who have signed up for this item. Moderator, may we have the first remote speaker, please?
Our first participant is Sherry Compatore. Our next speaker is Sylvia Swilly. You may begin.
I'm Dr. Sylvia Swilly, representing the Association of Black Women Physicians, APWP. The APWP looks with great anticipation to the launch of the Medi-Cal supported doula program in LA County. We have supported the effort, starting with support of the Omnibus Act that put the project in motion. We joined the National Medical Association and the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology in supporting the use of doulas. So confident are we that the doula program will positively affect African American infant and maternal morbidity and mortality, we have already engaged with the AIM doulas in education programs for doulas and providers. We hope to influence the larger physician community on the benefits of doulas and encourage their addition to the healthcare team. The creation of a hub structure is the next concrete step in actualizing this much-needed program. We intend to use our expertise and influence to make doula services available to all women. I ask the board to support this motion.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Eric Prevan. You may begin.
Thank you. This is a very, very important item, and I think that everything's been said, so I'm not going to say too much. I realize that we do repeat some of the things, but the thing that I've really took note of was the Medi-Cal. I think it's very smart to help people get the services that they can now be covered. And it's important to have a hub, and we need hubs for the other things that we're working on desperately to staff up for as well. But what's heartbreaking is that this doesn't have to be this way. We have information and we have competence. We just need to bring it and help people. And the doulas are a great solution. So, I support this wholeheartedly. Sometimes, it seems like something that's evil is actually just misinformation and incompetence. So I hope that we can make a dent and reduce these horrible, horrible discrepancies in these numbers. It's just outrageous. And so my heart goes out to the families, and I very much appreciate this response to the horror.
Thank you, Mr. Prevan. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Roy Humphreys. You may begin.
Okay, something that Supervisor Horvath, if I'm saying your name correctly, said that the black mortality situation was regardless of economics, etc. I won't repeat that. But interesting to have a follow-up study to see the impact of what the impact is of this program, perhaps in a year or less, whatever works out. Thank you.
You. Next speaker, please.
Madam Chair, there are no other speakers in the queue to address the board.
Okay, we have somebody here in person. Hello, welcome.
Thank you, and good morning, Madam Chair and Supervisors. I'm so grateful to be here, and thank you.
Have a follow-up study to see the impact of what the impact is of this program, perhaps in a year or less, whatever works out. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Madam Chair, there are no other speakers in the queue to address the board.
Okay, we have somebody here in person. Hello, welcome.
Thank you, and good morning, Madam Chair and Supervisors. I'm so grateful to be here, and thank you, Supervisor Mitchell, for introducing this motion. Thank you, Supervisor Hilda Solis. You and former Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas supported the motion that myself and 3 other colleagues brought to you for the doula bill in January of 2020. So I'm very grateful. I am a part of AIM and lead a lot of the work that we're doing in this county to ensure that Black women have supportive and celebratory births. I am myself a doula. I have been doing this work for over 30 years, started with Black Infant Health Program, and I look forward to the continued support to ensure that not only are Black women are able to have equity in birth, but our babies are able to thrive and survive. I am a mother, I am a grandmother, I've been in this county 52 years, that's all of my life, so I appreciate the continued support and look forward to you passing this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another speaker? None. So no more in person, no more on the phone.
That is correct.
Okay, so hearing no other comments, colleagues, item 13 is now before us, moved by Supervisor Mitchell, seconded by Supervisor Solis to approve this item. Executive Officer, please call the roll.
Item 13 is before you. Supervisor Solis.
Aye.
Supervisor Solis. Aye. Supervisor Mitchell.
Aye.
Supervisor Mitchell. Aye. Supervisor Horvath.
Aye.
Supervisor Horvath. Aye. Supervisor Barger.
Aye.
Supervisor Barger. Aye. Supervisor Hahn.
Aye.
Supervisor Hahn. Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Now we're going to move on to item 16 and 1D, Declaration of Local Emergency for Homelessness, Implementation Actions, which were held by Supervisor Horvath. For members of the public on the telephone, please press 1, then 0 now to comment on item 16 and 1D. Supervisor, and we also have Faiza Davenport, our Chief Executive Officer, Cherie Todorov, our Executive Director of the Homeless Initiative, are here on the floor and available for questions. Supervisor Horvath, would you like to make some remarks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we all know, our county declared our homelessness emergency on January 10th. Less than 30 days later, under the leadership of our CEO and the Homelessness Initiative, the county is ready to move forward on implementing the board's vision of a service-driven, effective emergency response framed around people experiencing homelessness missions, encampment resolution, housing, mental health, and substance use disorder services. Our declaration's focus is on streamlined processes targeting hiring, housing, services, contracting and procurement, spending and communication and community outreach services. Although these improvements may seem technical in nature, their result will have very tangible, immediate impact on our ability to face the crisis before us. Immediate results include reducing the hiring time for street-based outreach workers and mental health clinicians, adding new positions in support of people who are unhoused, incentivizing hiring to fill long vacant county positions in a competitive labor market, identifying and expediting the process for county-owned land to become interim and permanent supportive housing, streamlining the contracting process for programs including outreach, mental health, and substance use services, allowing county departments to provide direct services to be implemented more quickly, and giving the CEO increased authority to rapidly release funding to county departments working in support of people experiencing homelessness. Of note, DHS will increase the number of its multidisciplinary teams from 35 to 55, which include a health specialist, mental health specialist, substance use specialist, peer lived experience, and a generalist. DMH will increase the number of home teams from 9 to 16. Home teams provide field-based outreach, engagement, support, and treatment to individuals with severe and persistent mental illness who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness. And our intent is to meet actual need. The expansion of these teams takes into consideration the number of unsheltered PEH who are estimated to be appropriate for MDT and home team services and the caseloads that these teams can support. Expansion will begin immediately and use expedited processes per the emergency declaration, and the goal is to have these teams in place by this summer. And I know Supervisor Barger has supported me in bringing forward this motion, and I believe we'd all like to hear an update from our CEO and Cherie as it relates to this report as well.
Thank you. Supervisor Barger.
I'll actually, Supervisor Horvath, let's hear from Faiza. That's a good point, and then I'll just make my comments. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and good morning, Supervisors. As Supervisor Horvath pointed out, our board letter item number 16 tops off two reports that we previously provided to your board. One was related to the question, what are the specific authorities that the county and the CEO needs in order to move our work forward quicker and timelier as we respond to homelessness. The second report was identify the staffing that the CEO's Homeless Initiative Office needs in order to manage this emergency declaration. And so the board letter that you see before you today is requesting that the board adopt the recommendations that are contained in the board letter that would help us do three things. Let me remind us of our three missions. The first mission is to work with our local cities and COGS on encampment resolution, which is one of the most visible signs of homelessness. The second mission is to focus and double down on housing, which is to do our part to do what we can to expedite the siting and the implementation of housing knowing that the cities are responsible for siting housing, but we also play a role as well. And then the third mission is to essentially double down on the providing of our mental health and our substance use services. We know that those are two themes that are that flow throughout not just our homeless issues, but some of our criminal justice issues as well. So those are the three missions. The authorities that we are seeking today essentially ask us to streamline our processes. We, as members of the public fisc, as stewards of the public fisc, and your board as the policymakers that decide where funding goes and how funding flows, we have developed a system of accountabilities. And I think that system serves us well when we are not in an emergency. And when I say that because you don't see in our annual audits, our single audit reports, you don't see the county coming back with a bunch of findings related to not following rules. You see us managing our budget in a responsible fashion. One of the issues that we're facing, however, is that the system of accountabilities don't work in an emergency. And so one of the things that we want to do is we want to streamline some of those systems of accountabilities, those rules, but not eliminate them. We want to be quick, but not hurry. And so that is the request that you see before you today. I'd be happy, Cherie Todoroff, if you want to add anything to that or take questions from your board or comments from Supervisor Barger.
Yes. Do you have anything to add?
Everything I have that. Okay.
So,
Supervisor Barger.
Yeah, so I just, first of all, I want to thank Supervisor Horvath for inviting me to continue working alongside her on this item. I mean, this is something that, again, I say this often, but any one of us can put our name at the top of this because it's a priority for each and every one of us. The state's homeless emergency has truly reaffirmed this board's commitment to addressing the homeless crisis urgently. The first commitment occurred over a year ago when Supervisor Solis and I introduced a motion establishing the Blue Ribbon Commission on Homelessness. Out of that commission, we received 7 key recommendations, with perhaps the biggest one being that the county needs a formal homeless department or agency, because accountability really does start at the board, but there is no one entity that's really overseeing all the moving parts. I know that we have the CEO, HI, and cannot thank you enough, Sheree, for the job that you're doing. I mean, you are doing the work of many, and I don't know how, you're everywhere. And you are the voice for the county as it relates to the work that we are doing, and you and your team are doing a remarkable job. You operate on a lean, mean machine. I mean, each of you has several hats that you wear. Only now, you don't have to be lean anymore. I mean, I think that we recognize that we need to provide that support.
Just mean.
I took the mean out, though. I didn't because she's not mean. These recommendations empower the CEO, Homeless District team with the proper resources and authority necessary to make fast-paced judgments and ensure that the delivery of the county services is executed quickly, something that has been missing. From coordination with local jurisdictions, hiring up new staff, to negotiating and amending Measure H contracts, the Homeless Initiative team will lead our response to the humanitarian crisis on homelessness. They will continue to do all of this until we have built up and established a county homelessness department or agency. I want to thank you, Cherie, and your team, but I also want to point something out, and I know Supervisor Mitchell knows this. You know, we talk about, mental health services or substance abuse. We're going to have to change federal law to accommodate some of what we're talking about, especially as it relates to mental health. But yesterday I had the pleasure of going out to Impact, which is a drug treatment center, which really deals with clients that are coming either out of our judicial system or are indigent with no form of income. And we're going to have to look at changing state and federal laws as it relates to substance abuse treatment, because I will tell you, when I found out that they give you 30 days and then you have to move that individual, I know just from my short time dealing with this issue, 30 days is not enough, especially when we're going to be addressing people that have been on the street for a long time, that have serious substance abuse problems, and many have co-disorders. And so we're going to have to roll up our sleeves here and look at what legislative fixes need to be made. And again, Supervisor Mitchell and I, sitting on CSAC and on NACO, this has been something you've been working on, I've been working on, but we need to, with a sense of urgency, educate. And it's not unique to LA County. This is going to be up and down the state. And I have a feeling it's going to be throughout the entire nation, especially on the substance abuse issue. I had no idea. And then the lack of sober living facilities, so that when they're kicked out after 30 days, where do you place them? We are setting people up for failure. And I, for one, believe that this board, given the fact that we represent over 10 million people, should be using our voice and our clout to address the shortfalls and the short-sightedness of the laws that are in play. And so we're going to be working on that. But I really do commend you, and I'm excited. This is an opportunity. And I know, Supervisor Sleece, I'm sure you've heard from your cities. I've heard from my cities. Hats off to you all. They really do feel like they have a seat at the table, and they feel that they have been heard. And I cannot thank you enough for that, because it's important for us to recognize that while LA City is ground zero, and Mayor Bass is phenomenal, as is City Council, there are 87 other cities that have this crisis impacting their community. So thank you very much for letting me be the co-author.
Thank you. Supervisor Mitchell. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I really appreciate the motion and all of the work I know that the departments had to do to improve coordination and increase efficiencies to help bring our family, friends, and neighbors experiencing homelessness inside, and that's our collective goal. And I think this current moment gives us an opportunity to really showcase what we've been doing here at the county. It absolutely does. All three missions that Ms. Davenport talked about, I think are critical to our progress, so I support that. I do want to absolutely make sure that in our desire to move quickly, that we don't lose focus on equity, accountability, and transparency. So I appreciate your acknowledgement. You're right. The county gets great audits and a budget this size. That's significant. I appreciate that with regard to the accountability. So I just want to make sure that history doesn't repeat itself, that under the premise of moving fast, that the most impacted continue sometimes to get left behind, in particular, our Black and brown constituents. So how are all of the departments working to ensure that with this emergency order, we actually help the people in neighborhoods that bear the brunt of the harms of the past? What are we going to do to ensure that we have proportionally housed Latinx and Black unhoused people?
Thank you, Supervisor Mitchell. Equity is extremely important to us as we work through this emergency declaration. My office has already met with Dr. Scorza and his team. In fact, we're having a several-hour workshop together this afternoon to look at all aspects of the emergency declaration and its missions to apply the RD equity tools. And we'll be looking at that in all of the communities in which we will be doing our encampment resolution work, with a particular eye to looking at the data points that will help inform the communities that we're going into, but also with an eye toward being very aware of the potential for any unintended impact of the work that we're doing. So we want to look at that before we begin it. Dr. Scorza and I have discussed this, and we're very, very committed to the work. And I have so much appreciation actually for his team, who is sitting down with us to go through this and is committed to work with us at the Homeless Initiative, as well as with all of our county departments that will be partnering on this.
I appreciate that. I think just the last piece I would raise, I'm sure all of us not often, but we hear from our community-based providers and constituents who raise concerns about services and benefits either not reaching them, or they are service providers and they're not kind of a part of the equation. And sometimes with delegated authority, we kind of hear about these complaints after the fact. And so tell me what we're going to do to make sure that, again, with regard to equity in terms of the recipient of the benefit, that we're also making sure that the provider community is at the table and will have a role to play in creating the service delivery infrastructure that we need to really make this work.
Yeah, the provider community is central to all of this work. In fact, the vast majority of work that the county does for people experiencing homelessness, when we're talking about our outreach work, our interim housing work, and our permanent supportive housing work, is done through our partnership and contract community-based organizations and homeless services providers. So they are essential to be at the table. We have made a very concerted effort to include them in a very sort of intentional way, but also with a very, very open ears to all of the input that they're providing. We will continue with those convenings, but more than that, they're on the front line. They are the service provider. So they're actually informing us. They're telling us what needs to be done, what their needs are, where we're going to have the greatest impact serving people experiencing homelessness. They have told us about the flexibility that they need and be able to provide the services, how we need to look at our contracting to support that flexibility. And so they're essential to all of the work that we're doing, and they will be there with us. There's certainly, we can see from the work that's happening within the city of Los Angeles, that so much of it is service provider driven, and that will extend as we do our work countywide.
I appreciate that, and that we
Supervisor
will
Mitchell?
be in a position to course correct when we hear from them that it doesn't fall on deaf ears, that we'll course correct and do what we can. Yes.
If I could just place a finer point on that, I think one of the very important things to think about in this conversation is the things that the county can influence and the things that we can control. So your board is the first level government in the unincorporated areas.
Right.
We have more freedom and flexibility to take that RD Explorer tool and to arm it in terms of helping us figure out where resources flow in our unincorporated areas. For example, with encampment resolution with cities, we want to offer cities an opportunity for a hyper-local solution. And maybe the areas where a city might focus may not necessarily be an area where we would focus. And that's where I think the providers are really important, because this board funds the providers through Measure H. And so I think as we listen to that feedback, that we might get from folks who are receiving our services or even doing work providing those services. There are areas that we influence and control, and we want to make sure that we infuse our control arm as deeply as possible.
Appreciate
while
that.
Also allowing cities to be able to kind of figure out what their hyper-local need is as well.
And even with that, I appreciate that distinction between influence versus manage directly. And even with that, making sure cities don't lose sight of what we know to be true in terms of the segments of our communities who are overrepresented among our unhoused population. So thank you for that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Solis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also want to thank Supervisors Horvath and Varga for introducing the motion. And I particularly want to thank our Homeless Initiative, Sherry Turteroff, and our CEO, and all of the staff that helped to make this presentation possible, because I really do think it has been a labor of love for the last few years, and how we've really, I think, centered ourselves on how we can be a more effective body, because we have, and we know we have been criticized by many other cities outside, including the city of LA, but more importantly, other cities that felt that what is it that we have at stake here? If we're providing funding, how do we access those services? And I think, Sherry, you were wonderful in coming out to my community several times in the San Gabriel Valley to explore and have those discussions with our cities. And as a result, we saw some of them take up our role and actually put forward and accept funding and solicit funds for a room key and now home key, and now looking at even broader support. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how we can continue to expedite this process so that we can easily get more cities involved. When we do make a statement at the county, other cities follow. And if other cities take that up, other cities, it's a domino effect. They will also, I think, feel not the pressure, but the willingness and support that we have to offer and the technical assistance. And I really want to commend you for that. And I thank the board initially for working back on the Blue Ribbon Commission to try to organize how we could have a better governance model. We're coming up with it as we're going through our discussions and actually putting our priorities up front. And I'm happy to say that through our own efforts here, we've been able to put money in for interim housing for some of our cities. $10 million meant a lot for our cities that aren't all ready to buy along with everything that we want, but at least some are taking advantage. And also $15 million in terms of grants through Measure H to help with local homelessness programs. All those incentives are going to help us. And I would say that what you've done so far, Sherry, and also our CEO team, has helped our cities understand by actually meeting with them, taking them to other parts of the country, even on a learning, session. And you had my city manager from El Monte go out with you to see what governance could look like and those models, because we do have to have more buy-in. And I think that the Council of Governments is a good way to start, and we've started that, but that isn't the only exclusive. There has to be cities that also want to start on their own, and they may be even more aggressive than the COGs are in some way. So we got to allow for that flexibility. That's what I'm looking forward to, and I wholeheartedly know that you have to have a good support team around you, and we have to have good staff to be able to provide readily available those services and move in an efficient managed way that we can be accountable, transparent, but also give confidence to our residents that we mean business and that we can also show results. So I really want to tip my hat off to both of you and the staff. Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, I'm bringing people from my district to see your Hilda El Solis village, so we don't need to go across the country to see what we can do quickly to, dismantle encampments and give people a place with real dignity and real respect. The village is phenomenal. So, Supervisor Horvath.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To address some of the comments that came up prior to our discussion here today, I also spoke with the CEO and with Director Todorov on an amendment that might help address some of the concerns that were raised, to direct the CEO and Homeless Initiative to notify the board offices about the allocation of county services and resources, including outreach, housing navigation, intensive case management, mental health and substance use, interim housing, permanent housing, or other rental subsidies in support of encampment resolution efforts, including Inside Safe or other initiatives. These notifications to the board offices should happen in real time before resolution efforts are implemented or teams or resources are deployed, providing awareness to the board offices in preparation of the street-based operations. Notifications can be communicated via email and should include information on the encampment resolution, location, date, and county services to be employed. And I'm sure we all want to know what's going on with Inside Safe in particular, but all of these efforts, as they're happening in our district, we know they might be city-led efforts, but it takes county services to make them successful, and we want to know what's happening in our district in real time. So I hope that's helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes?
Sorry, I wanted to also read in a motion that's related to this item.
Okay, so let me give my remarks on this item, because I also have an amendment that I hope the author and co-author will accept. So yeah, everybody has said it. This is great. We're modeling a new behavior. Honestly, to see, it was a month ago that we locked arms with the City of LA, and then along with your declaration of homeless emergency here in LA County, to see Cherie and to see Fizia really at those meetings over in the EOC at the City of Los Angeles, really again is a new day. because I feel like we're really treating this with the urgency that it demands. So I was going to offer a friendly amendment, if it's acceptable, in Directive 6, that just was going to add the cities and the COGS to that. I don't know if you want me to read the whole thing, but it's just adding the cities and the Council of Governments to Directive 6.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
If the executive office needs it more specifically read, but I'm comfortable.
Okay. All right. That's my remarks. Okay, now Supervisor Solis.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have a motion related to item 16 that will be voted on separately. I want County Council and the CEO, HI, and DCBA to conduct a legal review of the local emergency order and tenant protections. The board, I believe, needs to explore all options available to protect tenants and landlords. We all know that tenant protections in Los Angeles County have kept families housed throughout the pandemic and are set to end on March the 30th, meaning that more than 30,000 households could face eviction by the end of the year, according to a UCLA researcher's estimate based on the County Superior Court records. Furthermore, according to the Department of Consumer and Business Affairs, they report 3,200 unlawful detainers are filed per month. On January the 10th, the board approved the homeless emergency order to address the homeless and housing crisis in Los Angeles County, and today this board is approving the implementation plan because we know it is so critical for us to act now. The county may proclaim a local emergency when there is an existence of conditions of disaster or of extreme peril to the safety of persons and property within the territorial limits of the county. And when these conditions are or are likely to be beyond the control of services, personnel, equipment, and facilities of the county and require the combined forces of other political subdivisions to combat homelessness and the lack of affordable housing, meet these requirements for a local emergency. Conditions of extreme danger to the safety of persons exist on the basis of pervasive homelessness and the lack of affordable housing in Los Angeles County. Homelessness is a complicated, as we know, issue and multifaceted that requires, among other things, the development of new affordable housing, including protections for tenant and landlords. And for these reasons, I believe it's necessary for Los Angeles County to analyze other vehicles to prevent any further displacement of tenants for their homes. I therefore move that the Board of Supervisors direct the Chief Officer, Homeless Initiative, and Department of Consumer and Business Affairs, in consultation with our County Council, to report back within 45 days with recommendations for measures to protect tenants from falling into homelessness based on the local emergency for homelessness. Members, keep in mind, this is just a report back within 45 days. In the past, we have given deference to that to members. So what I would ask for your consideration on the item. And I know that Supervisor Hahn, you have concerns about also asking our DCBA to come back and work on these issues. But I do believe, in all honesty, this is an urgent matter. We wouldn't have required an emergency on homelessness had it not been. But it's a report back, and I would just emphasize that. And I would respectfully request support. And I believe I need a motion to second.
I'm happy to second the motion if that's in order, Madam Chair.
Okay. And I do know, Supervisor Mitchell and Barger, you want to speak on this motion? Okay. Supervisor Barger and then Mitchell.
Thank you. And I appreciate this, Lisa. And I'm willing to support this if we also include in there getting input from both Judicial Council as it relates to what they're seeing coming through. Because I know I went and met with a woman from Door of Hope who had constructive criticism about a bad landlord, quite frankly, that wanted to evict her so he could fix up his place and then charge more. And she was trying to pay and he wouldn't accept it. And the 5-day unlawful detainer, when it's delivered, you've got 5 days, was not sufficient time to address the issue. So I think it'd be helpful to get input from the bench, but also ask the apartment association for some input as well, because I've talked to them, they recognize that there are bad players, and they recognize that there are laws that need to be changed. But I would hope that we would, and to the apartment association doesn't mean you're going to get everything you want, but at the same time, I'd be curious to know what fixes they would like to see in tenant protections. Because, you know, there are those that think I'm against tenant protections. Nothing could be further from the truth. But I think you need to have a balanced approach. It was COVID, and now it's homelessness as it relates to the emergency. But the goal is to keep people from ending up on the street and fixing a system that I think is broken. It was broken long before COVID. And this may be our opportunity to address the shortfalls and shortcomings within the existing laws. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Supervisor Mitchell.
Thank you very much. I'll be supporting the motion today. It's just a couple things I really want to remind us all of. First of all, I completely support strengthening the county's permanent tenant protections.
With gratitude to my team, the same folks that continue to work on the protections and all the report backs and all the work that's been happening as a result of in response to all of our activities. All the same folks that are planning this event. We have met with several folks, including our Center for Strategic Partnerships, to see if there's an opportunity to leverage them to support some of this work as well. So we do plan on moving forward pretty quickly with that as well.
I appreciate that. Again, I'll be supporting it. I just think it's important that we are clear about what.
We're ending the COVID emergency March 31st, which ends the tenant protections in all of our cities, not just unincorporated, because under an emergency, we broaden our reach, some would say overreach, to enact policies. What I thought we were doing was to get a report back from Raphael. I asked for what can we do to protect our tenants outside of an emergency declaration, because emergency declarations come and go. And what do we put in place outside of that, which would, by the way, only be unincorporated county, which is, as we talked earlier with gun regulations, that's where we have our power. The emergency gives us broadened powers. So I thought we were going to get a report back. I heard it's coming back in 10 days. Is that correct?
We have multiple report backs coming back with several recommendations.
That would tell us what tenant protections we could choose from in your report back. What are all of our options outside of an emergency? So it would be in unincorporated. So that's kind of where I thought we were going, and I even commented about the off-ramp and being consistent and transparent, particularly for our landlords.
So with an emergency, is it county-wide then?
Yes.
So emergency is county, and so you're saying is that the issue that you pointed to? In terms of emergency versus.
I just want everybody to be clear what we're getting a report back. We're getting a report back on what tenant protections we can put in place as it relates to the homeless emergency, which would broaden our powers outside of unincorporated and expand to all 88 cities. That's what we're talking about.
So then this motion, so you're saying, can I be recognized?
Tell me what I'm saying.
I'm not sure.
I know, me neither.
I'm trying to clarify.
Yeah.
So
We have enormous strategy, and we're gonna, we'll ask you those questions, Cherie and Phasia, when we get to that item. But that is definitely a strategy for us, is keeping those who are already have a roof over their head, keeping them inside. So, okay, yes.
Yeah, so I
think you got your votes,
I'm
don't say
hoping-
anything.
Yeah, and I agree that, we'll pepper it with other advocacy groups and judicial council and what have you, that's fine. I would just want to remind folks, I don't know about other board offices, but I know in my office, we continue to get calls from renters who have received eviction notices with large families. Some of them came to our board meeting and they were given notice on a Thursday. They weren't able to couple together legal assistance in time, and they're removed. So as we're speaking, people are being unhoused. And I just want to let people kind of understand some of the situation that some of us are seeing in our own districts. So again, I just ask, it's a report back, and let's see where we go. you know, unfortunately, we may not have all the answers, but we're trying. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Where are we in this agenda?
We are now ready to call members of the public to speak.
Yes, okay. Please call the members of the public that have signed up to speak on item 16 and 1D, as well as this read-in motion. Is that correct? Is that what we're
Lancaster shelter that was controlled by Catholic Charities. There has always been a tucking or pulling away the power of outsiders to control homelessness in our valley because of the agenda of our council members, especially Mayor Paris. We have called in the Department of Justice to intervene on many levels that this board has ignored. So your enthusiasm is great, but there is a white elephant in the room. We have had a mayor who has declared war on the homeless publicly. We have had a mayor who has told residents to go out and arm themselves because the homeless commit crimes. We have had a mayor who has declared war on Karen Bass and her new initiative. We have had a mayor who has gotten into trouble telling landlords not to rent to Section 8. Thank you very much. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Cynthia Gonzalez. You may begin. Hello? Hello? Go ahead. Hi. Go ahead. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, yes, I wanted to speak on number 16.
Go right ahead.
Okay. Hi. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to thank Supervisor Gila Solis for introducing this motion and, you know, always being on the, you know, helping tenants out. But I just wanted to comment super quickly on the fact that although we do see this amazing motions being put forward, I just wanted to let you know that we want to still take into consideration the tenants and tenants protection. And the numbers that we are seeing, right, with tenants being still evicted and still being affected by this pandemic are outrageous. And we know that because of tenant protections that existed and were set in place during the pandemic, that helped a lot of the homeless number, right, of a lot of people from being evicted. And so I just wanted to check and make sure that we take that into consideration as we push forward.
Next speaker, please. Our next speaker is Pam Augustin. You may begin.
Hello, my name is Pamela Agustin, and I'm with the Eastside Leads and Keep LA House Coalition. I'm supporting item 16 today. I appreciate Supervisor Horvath and Barger for this motion, and while the implementation plan for this item looks good, it is missing the important tool against displacement and homelessness, and that is tenant protections. Supervisor Solis, you mentioned on the dais on January 24th that over 3,000 unlawful detainers are filed monthly. And this is only expected to increase, especially after March 31st, when the protections of the county end. Right now, as you all have pointed out, that end date is scary because many local jurisdictions do not have many of the protections that you all have secured for unincorporated LA County residents. So please adopt item 16, but also approve Supervisor Solis' motion that requests that this local order incorporate tenant protections. Lastly, in this motion, you mentioned that a more streamlined creation of housing and expanded services is necessary. But it is important that the county also support the development of affordable housing targets the most at-risk residents and households, and these are residents who earn less than 15% AMI and below.
Next speaker, please. Our next speaker is Brittany Williams. You may begin.
Hi, I am supporting item 16. Let's keep everybody housed. Speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Eric Prevan. You may begin.
Thank you. It's Eric Prevan, and this has been a very long and interesting conversation, of course, but we have to kind of, I love the three missions. Okay, the three missions are very, very good. Maybe we could whittle it down, but first of all, it's working with the local cogs on encampment resolution, which is a great idea. And great work on Horvath's part, once again, appointing herself to the COG We need people to roll up their sleeves and get in there. And then also doubling down on expediting the citing these things is important if we can get the cities to cooperate. And then lastly, of course, doubling down on the mental health and substance abuse, which is so important. You know, and streamlining, for God's sakes. Enough is enough. How about a boondoggle to Washington, where all the supervisors and the mayor go and try to get out of this emergency declaration nonsense, which we have to talk about, and just provide the funding to make the changes. Then we can, you know, you could spend a couple weeks in a nice hotel in Washington. I know that we're all...
Thank you, Mr. Prevan.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Roy Humphreys. You may begin.
Supervisor Barger has hit right on the head there, that this is a programmed failure. You haven't got the money to take care of one of the three, and it's all you have to do is reference item number 22. And something that you all have avoided with the plague are the transients, and Supervisor Solis knows well about the Fullerton Road tunnel dwellers, so forth, in Roland Heights. You avoid that with the plague, and you have failed to establish transient campsites to get these people off, to get them there. And if you don't like me suggesting it, how about prior Sheriff Villanueva was one of his planks. You need to get those sites up. That should have been done a long time ago, from day one, to get these people off the street. And you can provide services at a point and focus. It's called efficiency. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Madam Chair, there are no other speakers in the queue to address the board.
Okay, let's take Dr. Cravel.
Yes, this is not a good day. And from just listening the last few minutes, I am very concerned, because the county has spent millions, probably billions, on the homeless. And the situation now is worse than ever. And LASA is totally useless. And they tell you, you know, we cannot do nothing until you get a 3-day notice, and then we can help you. And then when you get a 3-day notice, they say, oh, sorry, we cannot do nothing. I think it's a very scary situation. And a new so-called director of LASA, main success is to have triple the hiring of people for where she works now. LASA don't need new employees. They need a fiction employee. It's totally useless. And they tell you, you know, we cannot do nothing until you get a 3-day notice, and then we can help you. And then when you get a 3-day notice, they say, oh, sorry, we cannot do nothing. I think it's a very scary situation. And a new so-called director of LASA, main success is to have triple the hiring of people for where she works now. LASA don't need new employees. They need a fiction employee. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
We're all cursed. We're all cursed. And the reason why we're cursed, because God hates you. God hates people who speak up against the homeless. Those who pray and take advantage of homelessness and the situation of homelessness. Just like we had the attorney here speaking on record, which she has no reference to be speaking about anything about homeless, because she's an idiot. Stick to the law, stick to your books, and that's the only idiocy you know. As far as the other 5 board members, you need to construct yourself around the not blessed curse, because this curse has been going on for years, and people are suffering under HHH, Measure H, the offensiveness on a matter of public and public concerns, because people like you hate. You hate people, and you like to see people suffer. You like to watch people suffer.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Next speaker, please. Go ahead.
Pray for the United States, because we're all doomed.
Next speaker. Go ahead.
Harnham with the Inner City Law Center, and the Keep LA House Coalition. I think Supervisor Hahn's point about Measure H funding shows that prevention is not simply an economic question, but a question of policy. This plan is missing one of the most effective tools in the homelessness prevention toolkit. If we're serious about addressing homelessness, we can't ignore policies that keep vulnerable residents in their homes. And if we're serious about equity, we need to acknowledge that the eviction system disproportionately targets Black and brown communities, just like the criminal justice system, and that's a big part of why we see such unacceptable levels of homelessness in those communities. We strongly support Supervisor Solis's report back so we can employ one of the most successful strategies to prevent additional residents from being pushed out of their homes and into their streets. We all know, and the data shows, that renter protections prevent homelessness, and we urge you all to support this report back. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Yes, I'm Katrina again, and I just want to say that there's several layers to homelessness, and there's mental health, substance abuse. All these issues do need to be addressed. However, we need to meet our community where they're at, and that's where real services to meet their realistic needs. And Supervisor Barger, you said something that really hit home for me. I had a client that was at the Hope for Home shelter named Gary Perez, and he took his life in October of 2019 after going into rehab because he didn't have no place to go. He had fear of homelessness. So with that fear, he didn't think he was going to make it. He was an actor. He was Corey Feldman's best friend, and he still had lack of hope, and he took his life. And he was the reason why I started changing the faces of homelessness, so people can have a place to go when they come out of rehab with supports.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Yesterday, Chief Hunt, I think the COVID ends May 11th, 23. Like the president said, I think we have a little bit more time to think this out. It sounds very convoluted now. I would like to become a volunteer to find out how we navigate this homeless thing for the last 20 years. 2004, we filed for injunction with Carol Sobel, and it's 2023 and nothing has happened. We still got 70,000 homeless people. That's amazing to me because we have all these rocket scientists that know what they're doing, but they know the logistics, but don't know they know the statistics, but don't know the logistics. Please help me out with this. I would like to become a volunteer to find out what's going on the ground level so that we can solve the problem. There's a problem, there's a solution. Let's get to the solution, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you to the Board of Directors.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, good morning. My name is Carlotta Drummond. I'm really happy to be here because I'm seeing some things today that is really changing the way I feel. I am homeless at this time. Not only am I homeless, I have a son that is special needs. So is he. A lot of the things that when you all sit here and you talk, I'm glad you all are seeing our faces today. I don't even really want anyone to really get close to me because I'm a woman that likes to bathe in the tub in the morning and bathe at night. And I want to be transparent with you all. And if you all tell me I have to sit down, I will. Okay. For 2 days, I have not been able to really take a bath. I didn't even know I was coming here today. I was led here to come here by my heart. And so, I'm glad to be in this room to see how, when you all get together, what it is that you do. I feel that you all are doing your best, but when the issue of homelessness, it's not enough. Many of the people that are working in the offices, they really need help And the reason I say they need help,
Thank you.
because a lot of times they don't know the questions to ask you.
Thank you so much for coming down. We're trying to be fair with everyone. I gave you a couple of minutes as I know my colleagues were feeling the need to hear you out. We would like to make some help available to you this morning. If you would like to go right now, we will see what we can do to connect you.
I will be writing to you.
Thank you. Thank you. But we would like to offer you help this morning, this afternoon.
Give her a voucher to start.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker, please.
We have one telephonic speaker.
Okay.
Our next participant is Fred Sutton. You may begin.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Fred Sutton with the California Apartment Association. We are very concerned about the amending motion that just came forth. The county has continually moved the goalposts over the last 2 months. It appears there is now a consideration of utilizing a new emergency declaration to exercise and continue unprecedented power countywide and further control housing providers. We appreciate the inclusion of housing providers in this report. Many of the regulations and controls recently passed in the county and city of Los Angeles are controversial and will be counterproductive to our shared goals. We urge the county to return to a deliberative process, utilizing emergency powers to decree these controls on incorporated cities is not right. We oppose any further use of emergency powers to continue strict controls, urge the board to have debate over areas that it has jurisdiction in and make those policies, but utilizing the controls and emergency powers is not right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other speakers on the phone or in the room? That's it? Okay, hearing no other comments, colleagues. Yes. Yes.
I just wanted to thank our staff and the service provider who helped our last member of the public who testified and said that, she didn't need any help from anybody else in the audience to make her point. She was able to manage her communication to us just fine by herself. She didn't need mansplaining or arm movement. She handled it herself, and I respect her and appreciate her for that. But I want to thank the service provider and our team for respectfully following her out to provide whatever supports we can afford her. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Mitchell. Hearing no other comments, item 16 as amended is before us, moved by Supervisor Horvath, seconded by Supervisor Barger to approve this item. Executive Officer, please call the roll.
Item 16 as amended is before you. Supervisor Solis.
Aye.
Supervisor Solis, aye. Supervisor Mitchell.
Aye.
Supervisor Mitchell, aye. Supervisor Horvath.
Aye.
Supervisor Horvath, aye. Supervisor Barger.
I'm going to abstain.
Supervisor Barger abstains. Supervisor Hahn.
Aye.
Supervisor Hahn, aye. Motion carries 4-0 with one abstention.
Is that okay that she seconded it, even though I made you second it? Just for clarification, you probably would rather.
Well, it's a report back.
But you're abstaining on the item. I just didn't know if it was awkward for you to have seconded based on what I said.
Well, I can't second if I abstain, but
Okay,
why don't I'll tell you what. For a consensus, we get a report back. Since you accepted my request to include all the players, I will change my vote to an aye.
Look at that.
Supervisor Barger, aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, great. Did you count my vote? Because I thought I started talking when you got to me.
No, I counted
Okay, aye. Okay, now supervisors, we're going to vote on item 1D. That is moved by Supervisor Horvath, seconded by Supervisor Mitchell to approve this item. I'm taking you off the list. Executive Officer, please call the roll on 1D.
Item 1D is before you. Supervisor Solis.
Aye.
Supervisor Solis, aye. Supervisor Mitchell.
Aye.
Supervisor Mitchell, aye. Supervisor Horvath.
Aye.
Supervisor Horvath, aye. Supervisor Barger.
Aye.
Supervisor Barger, aye. Supervisor Hahn.
Aye.
Supervisor Hahn, aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, now we're now going to the read-in motion that Supervisor Solis put forward for the report back as amended by, she'd accepted Supervisor Barger's amendment. So.
We just voted on that.
No, I know, it's confusing.
Oh,
It
so why
wasn't an
would I
amendment,
vote
it was
no
a
on-
separate motion.
Oh, okay. Wow. All right. That was what I was voting.
Because you
abstaining
thought
on.
she
Yes,
accepted
I
it,
was
so you were
confused
trying to be
because
nice.
that motion actually, the one that I abstained, I was a co-author on. So.
Right, that's why I had you second it.
Yeah.
But then I know, I didn't want to like call you out, but. Okay, we're clear now?
I am clear.
This is now we're voting on Supervisor Solis's read-in motion.
Yes, I'm clear now.
That you amended, that she accepted your amendment.
And now you know how I'm going to vote.
Okay, so why don't we have Supervisor Solis move, and let's have Supervisor Horvath second. As amended, item 1, Solis's motion.
Solis's motion requesting a report back as amended by Supervisor Barger is before you. Supervisor Solis.
Solis on first, yes.
Solis, aye.
There you go.
Supervisor Mitchell.
Mitchell, aye.
Supervisor Mitchell, aye. Supervisor Horvath.
Aye.
Supervisor Horvath, aye. Supervisor Barger.
Aye.
Supervisor Barger, aye. Supervisor Hahn.
Aye.
Supervisor Hahn, aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Great. We're going to go now to item 22. This is the fiscal year 2023-24 Homeless Initiative Funding Recommendations, which I held. I just didn't feel like it was right for us to approve, over $500 million going forward with on consent. So I thought we should at least talk about it, let the public have an opportunity to weigh in on it. So for the members of the public on the telephone, you can press 1 and 0 now to comment on item 22. That's our homeless initiative funding recommendations.
And we have when we passed Measure H 6 years ago, we created 47 strategies to guide us how we would invest these funds. And each year we pass the Measure H budget. And while many people are served, our homeless numbers were not decreasing. Then the pandemic hit, and it became clear that what we were doing needed to be changed. Last year, I introduced a motion along with my colleague Supervisor Barger to create a new framework for these Measure H dollars. The framework changed the 47 strategies down to 5 strategies, which are coordinate, prevent, connect, house, and stabilize. And this new framework also provided a focus to our cities and council of governments, making sure that they have access to Measure H funds. That's also different. And as I said, we have Cherise Todoroff, our Director of Homeless Initiative. Thank you for being with us today. And I spoke to Kezia also a little bit about this yesterday. And I maybe from both of your perspectives, got a PowerPoint, talk to us and talk to the public and say how particularly are this year's recommendations copacetic with our homeless emergency declaration. Are these funds meeting the moment of us changing pushing the reset button on treating this as the emergency that it deserves? And maybe you could both tell us a little bit about that. How is what we're doing today, approving this money, this over $600 million in these 5 buckets, going to change the trajectory of the people who are suffering on the streets, as well as show the public that we are being accountable to their dollars and their sense of emergency and their frustration in the feeling that nothing has worked so far. And I'll let either one of you go first.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon.
Yeah, yes, you outrank her, so go ahead.
I will get us started. So let me answer the question very specifically, and the answer is yes. This budget and the way that it is being presented has been designed and has been reimagined to meet
on the streets, as well as show the public that we are being accountable to.
Answer the question very specifically, and the answer is yes. This budget and the way that it is being presented has been designed and has been reimagined to meet the moment. And I want to give you an example. I think your office, you introduced a motion a while ago and you talked about how we went from the 47 strategies, which no one kind of would know unless you knew the number B6, A3. So it was not in and of itself very communicative. And we've reduced those into 5 easy to understand categories, which you just shared. And then those 5 buckets are further split into 3 categories. They are prevention, which you all talked about earlier. It is our local solutions and working with cities. And then it is our homeless rehousing system. And I want to talk about the local solutions and working with cities. And so in prior years, every year, the prior conversation that the board was having regarding prevention, this mapping exercise will help the board contextualize where the dollars are going, whether it's going on the prevention services side or whether it's going to the homeless rehousing system, which is really the focus of Measure H. So I think that would be very helpful. And I think up until this time, departments have, some of the departments have really been left to their own devices as to how they use their Measure H funding, their homelessness funding. So once the board understands the full continuum of all of the funding, we can be more intentional in recommending to your board where and how departments should use that funding. Some of the funding sources are restricted, but that doesn't mean that the board can't direct the department to align how they use that funding with this larger plan.
Thank you. Yeah, that addresses my last question too, because we know we don't want to be using resources that are intended for people who are already experiencing homelessness and the wraparound support that they need for prevention, though we know prevention is important. And so there's an intersection of a lot of different efforts in that continuum of care. So thank you for acknowledging that. That's all for me.
Thank you. Supervisor Solis, and then Supervisor Mitchell.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank you again, Sherry Todoroff, for all your help and your leadership, and our CEO. You really helped to put these initiatives, I think, really compartmentalized in a budget that really helps us to better understand what our priorities are. So I want my hats off to you on that. And especially because now that I represent all of Skid Row, this has become even more acute for me in terms of really being laser focused on what's happening there. And I want to thank the CEO and the staff. Usually Greater Los Angeles Homeless Count shows us that over 4,402 people at that time were experiencing homelessness on Skid Row, including 33% with substance abuse disorder, 36% with serious mental illness, and 25% with physical disability. That doesn't even account for all the women and seniors there. I mean, I'm not even specifying that. And to me, that's why this partnership with Housing for Health on the Skid Row community and the City of Los Angeles, we're working to implement together this Skid Row action plan. And I hope to work closely with the mayor on that, because I think we don't want to duplicate. We want to make sure that we streamline and we really get the services that are most needed. I want to say that some of the things that we are doing in the Skid Row action plan will not only help with health and wellness, but it includes an increase in interim and permanent housing. That's something that we often talk about. It's hard to achieve on Skid Row. A drug user health hub, a 24/7 health clinic, and safe service area. The Skid Row action plan will also build on the successes of Every Woman House Plan, which was an initiative spearheaded by this board, but also in conjunction with the Downtown Women's Center to help house those women living on Skid Row. Since the inception of that program, Every Woman House Plan, 169 women have been permanently housed. And I'm glad that the funding in the budget will also support our local municipalities. And I want to give you a shout out for that, because you're helping to provide local homeless solutions, which will include $20 million for that fund and $5 million for the cities and COGS interim housing fund. It's my understanding. And these are the initiatives that I know all of us here can get behind. I don't want to repeat myself, but there are some cities, because we started with them 2 years ago with COVID, they've taken up the mantle and have been there. City of El Monte, 2 hotels that are now state project home key that helped to create 133 units when they were first just at the beginning. Now they see the permanent relationship in providing more long-term housing for these people. City of Baldwin Park, 2 interim housing sites. They created 25 units for single adults, and that was through our help, through your help and efforts. City of Pomona created 100 single adult home shelters recently, which is just incredible. So I know that we have a lot of work to do. These are just a few examples of what we need to build off of, I believe. But by showing example to other cities, again, the domino effect. Hopefully other cities will be empowered to do the same thing. So I thank you. I thank the CEO and the staff, and I look forward to this robust budget that will help you to have more staffing available to help you do your work even much more effectively as you've already demonstrated. So thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Mitchell.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I too want to thank you for your
Would come back and notify the board either formally or through your board deputies saying this is an emergency and we need to pivot, but we also want to make sure that the board is informed.
Great, that clears it up. And and I always go on record, I know we're doing it early this time. I always kind of object to us doing it before we get the homeless count numbers, because I think that might dictate where we're putting certain dollars, but that's how we do it. And I've objected every year, but that's how we're doing it. But I do think the fact that you're acknowledging your pivot ability, I think makes me feel a little bit better about doing this before we even get the numbers.
Yep.
Thank
Supervisor,
you.
we want to make sure that we use our the authority given to us by the board responsibly.
Yes.
And in a transparent way.
Yes. Okay, seeing no more supervisors, it was a good discussion. I'm glad we held this and talked about it. Are there members of the public who signed up to speak on item 22? Yes, okay.
There's a significant gap based on our portion of the countywide point-in-time count, and we ask for additional one-time support to address this underinvestment in Long Beach in the Gateway region. We also appreciate the partnership with the county on Project Home Key in Long Beach, and we would request additional ongoing operational dollars for sites that we are continuing to open. And last, we're also starting our second winter shelter with support from LASA, but there's a significant funding gap that the city has to generate. And so we're hoping that there's some one-time or additional offsets with Measure H dollars to be able to support that operation. Thank you so much for your leadership.
Thank you. Oh, wait, we cut him off when he said thank you for your leadership. Okay, next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Roy Humphreys. You may begin.
Yes, Supervisors, as earlier indicated, this item 22 sums is chump change. It's a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. And as we've earlier testified, that LASA is suffering from impotence. And further, that Supervisor Solis can't even get the burned out shelter home over on Otterbein with persons coming in and out of that burned out shell day and night. And Carlos, the neighbor, says, hey man, what can we do about this? Well, hey, we got the county sources, and again, they're suffering from impotence, and we're their victims, and they can't get the tunnel dwellers out of Fullerton. So what can we say? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Prevan. You may begin.
Thank you. It's Prevan, and I think that this is an enormous amount of money. I appreciate discussing it and outlining the priorities and the plan. The idea of getting to functional zero in under 5 years is just a beautiful thought, but I don't know. It seems a bit quixotic, to be honest, and I think more realistic is a nice 2 weeks in D.C. I was looking into some of the. I like the Park Hyatt, to be honest. It's a very nice place and it's convenient. And then what we could do is shift and pivot from ridiculous declarations of emergency one after the other to funding in some kind of a structural way. It's not more layers of folks analyzing it to put people inside. So the mayor likes Washington. I know all the supervisors. I'm not sure everybody's been there recently, but why not? Let's make it a whole kind of a party. We can bring all the not-for-profits too, and the staff. All the staff can come along, and then maybe we can get some of this daunting stuff done. Thank you.
Thank you. I left Washington, D.C. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Maria Mejia. You may begin.
Go ahead. Hey, is her line open?
Her line is open. I may have mispronounced her name, Maria Mejia.
If your line is open, go ahead and speak. Okay, let's move on to the next speaker and maybe try to find Maria.
Our next speaker is Diana Beard-Williams. You may begin.
Hi, this is Diane again, and I represent a group that we have formed called A Case for Justice in the Antelope Valley. We qualify for a lot of money. You just gave us money for parks. The bottom line is accountability. Again, that's the white elephant in the room. I want to know how you are going to hold the Antelope Valley, specifically Lancaster, accountable for any money that you give us, because we will take the money, but how can you give it to somebody who has publicly expressed disdain for the homeless and has acted that way for the last 3 decades? Supervisor Barger, you have not identified what has really been going on, and you yourself say we need to look at the causes and the root problems. And in the Antelope Valley, we are treated like a foreign country because of politics and because of the GOP connection. Please start to look and start to be accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker, please.
Madam Chair, there are no other speakers in the queue to address the board.
Hey, did you ever find Maria? Did we lose her?
Her line was open. She just didn't.
Okay, thank you. Let's go in person to Fred Hunt.
I'm not a rocket scientist, so I think the money should go towards more or less like stopping evictions, raising the FMR rate from $1,800 to $2,500. There's not a lack of housing, it's a lack of funding for one bedroom, stuff like that. $2,500 should be the R rate. I've been through 3 of the programs, and with the program going through is that you can't get a one bedroom for $1,800, if we really want to stop the homeless situation. That's raised, our rate to help mental health facilities. But it's like the problem and solution, the FMR rate is not standard until the landlords for one bedroom.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our rates. I've been through 3 of the programs, and what the program is going through is that you can't get a one bedroom for $1,800. So if we really want to stop the homelessness situation, let's raise the FMR rates so that we can get everybody housed into housing and things like that. Get the mental health people into mental health facilities and stuff like that. But it's like the problem, the solution. The FMR rates are not standard to what the landlords want for one bedroom.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, please. No more. Okay. Hearing no other comments, colleagues, item 22 is now before us. I'll move, seconded by Supervisor Mitchell, to approve this item. Executive Officer, please call the roll.
Item 22 is before you. Supervisor Solis. Aye. Supervisor Solis, aye. Supervisor Mitchell.
Aye.
Supervisor Mitchell, aye. Supervisor Horvath.
Aye.
Supervisor Horvath, aye. Supervisor Barger.
Aye.
Supervisor Barger, aye. Supervisor Hahn.
Aye.
Supervisor Hahn, aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Go forth and spend the money wisely. Okay, now we'll hear from members of the public wishing to address the board on all remaining items not held by supervisors and general public comment. For members of the public on the telephone, please press 1 then 0 now to comment on these items. You must indicate the agenda item numbers that you wish to address, including general public comment, in order for us to allocate the appropriate amount of time. Executive Officer, please call the members of the public who've signed up to speak on the remaining items and general public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the public, you will have up to 3 minutes to address the board on all remaining items and general public comment. You will have 1 minute for one item, 2 minutes for 2 or more items, and 1 additional minute for general public comment. Please state your name and clearly indicate the agenda items numbers you will be addressing. You may only address the board on these items. We will now call in speakers, and while they're coming forward, we will take telephonic speakers.
Public comment. You may begin.
Thank you. I'll speak on item 51. I'll do a little general public comment tied onto it, and then that's my time. So item 51 is a settlement of the matter entitled Los Angeles Times Communications LLC versus the County of Los Angeles. And Montana, please. And this is a case about the CPRA, which is something I'm very familiar with because I sued you guys about it. And me and Peter Eliasberg and David Strike Tremaine went all the way to the California Supreme Court, you quit. And it was a half a loaf. We got the records eventually, but my Fairweather attorney friend didn't want to bother the Board of Supervisors with the fees. Well, here, you're paying the LA Times, who helped you fight that idiot Villanueva, $450,000 and then another something like $250,000 for an unidentified law firm that I would like to know who it is and how much for what. And frankly, did we get the records? And are these records disclosed already, or are we just saying, well, enough is enough. It's $750,000. Let's stop fighting now. Okay, can we all agree? I mean, I don't want that. I think that's bad. I am very serious.
Thank you for. That is the last of your 6 minutes for this board meeting. We appreciate your input. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Mykesha Mack. Please state the item numbers you are addressing today and whether you'll address on general public comment. You may begin.
Hi, yes, this is Mykesha Mack, and I am addressing item number 12 for April Valentine. We came last week. I am April's closest cousin and the leader of the Justice for April campaign. And first, I just wanted to say thank you to each and every supervisor. I truly, deeply appreciated April's mother, her sister, our family. We appreciate the support that you all have given us, and we just want to say thank you. And I also wanted to comment on the hospital's comment or statement. And just the fact that this is the first time we've heard from the hospital. And honestly, I think it's a bunch of rubbish and what they said and how they care for us and just so many things and how they're aware of all the racial disparities and just so many things that they said. And this is the actual first time we've heard from them. We've never received a letter. We've never received a call. We've never received anything. And the fact that they addressed you guys and not us,
thank you.
Really seen that in face.
Thank you. Thank you for calling in. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Diana Beard-Williams. Please state the item numbers you are addressing today and whether you will address on general public comment. You may begin.
I will address some general public comments and also on the item pertaining to April and what the woman just shared and what I was going to say. I am really upset, Supervisor Barger and board, that we have to rely on the words of a medical provider in order to take any kind of action that is subversive or negligent in regard to our loved ones. I told you that Kaiser Permanente killed my husband, and that is no joke. I've been here for 30-plus years. And Catherine, your person called me and asked me about living accommodations, but nobody from Kaiser in over a year has felt they had to reach out to me or say anything to me because they are protected by the politics of the Antelope Valley. My general comment is, We have formed a taste of justice for the Unhoused Valley because we are treated like a separate state, a separate nation. And Catherine, this has been going on since Mike sat in that seat. Now it's my turn up at bat. My husband is dead, and I'm going to see what you do. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Roy Humphreys. Please state the item numbers you are addressing today and whether you will address on general public comment. You may begin.
This is General Public. Once again, bring to the attention of all the act of subversion and usurpation of the people's rights to address this board with this system that how many hours has it been? How many people can do that? And sometimes you carried out 8 hours. Get it back to where it was so ordinary people can participate in a timely manner. You are shameful. And another thing of shame is that timing clock that you put on the screen here on the computers. You don't have anybody with a skill set to operate the thing. Please, I implore you, remove it for your own self-image. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.